Marriage? Seiji's POV, so it's been 2 months again since I turned 16. The Demon Slayer court decided to throw a huge party for my birthday since I was officially an adult in samurai culture. And if you didn't know, demon slayers were samurai who slay demons. After my birthday, I immediately received a letter from Abuyashiki, telling me that he was sorry to miss the birthday celebration. And in the same letter, he wrote that I could take a vacation for as long as I needed. I was confused at first because how the fuck did he know I was going to ask for a vacation? For those who had forgotten, let me refresh your memories. At the age of 16, I was finally permitted to claim my inheritance. It was why I took the exams during the training arc, remember? So I was planning to ask for a break so that I could settle the documents. But Abuyashiki somehow knew it beforehand and granted me permission. Honestly, it was a little creepy. Anyway, it has been 2 months since then and I had finally settled everything. I was now the rightful owner of huge acres of land and every savings my brother and father, who were both high-ranking military officers, had, was finally mine. I was filthy rich now. Well, I was rich before, since being a Hashira and completing as many missions as I did paid quite well. But now, I was not just rich, I was filthy rich. Seiji, it's time for breakfast. I looked through the walls and saw my aunt call for me. In the next second, she realized how stupid she was for calling a deaf person and she came to my room. It has been 2 years, so of course that would slip her mind. She slid open the door to my room and said, "It's time for breakfast, Seiji." "Coming," I said and got up. On the floor were beautiful paintings I had made just this morning alone. Could you have guessed that having special eyes and perfect movement allowed you to create masterpieces? I didn't know it until I tried. I went out of my room and joined both my uncle and aunt on the table. We all ate the food while having a small conversation between eating. Things were just as it used to be. I had been staying with them for months now since, anything involving the government officials took an extremely long time. If the inheritance did not have sentimental value or was extremely valuable, I wouldn't even bother claiming it due to the hassle. I never told them specifically that I was only here to claim my inheritance. They must have thought that I was finally back. "Seiji, what is your thought on marriage?" I saw my uncle say. "Finally talking about a topic other than politics?" "Sure, I can tolerate this one. Marriage is cool," I said while putting a boiled egg in my mouth. "Protein. What is your opinion on you getting married?" he asked me again. I nearly scoffed. Marrying? I dared not even think of that in my line of profession. I hope I don't, but I could die any fucking moment. It would only take one encounter with the top 3 demons of the upper moon or Muzan. Then I'm cooked. I was strong but not on their level just yet. But marriage? That was the dream and one I would hopefully get to experience. I was not given a family in my past life and the one I was born into in this life got taken away from me. So why not make a new family? After everything was over, I hope I could make a big family. That's the dream, I said with a shrug. My uncle and aunt both looked at each other and smiled. I did not know why, but I suddenly had a bad feeling. "What?" I asked before putting another boiled egg in my mouth. "We found a girl." Pause. And then I spat out the egg in my mouth and started choking on their words. My uncle quickly passed me water and I downed the thing in a few seconds. After that, I took a deep breath and said, "What do you mean you found a girl?" "We found a girl you can marry. The father is an old friend of mine and his daughter is exactly the same age as you and she is looking for a husband." "Aren't I a little too young?" I asked with a strained face. "Nonsense, it's the perfect age. She can already marry by law at the age of 15 while you will be able to marry next year. It's the perfect time for an engagement." I sighed and rubbed my forehead. What makes you guys even think of doing such things? That too without my consent. Well, I apologize if we were being too hasty, after all, you just returned. But you are already more than capable of marrying. You have claimed your inheritance, so you have land and house. Not only that, you have the money, and you said you also had a high-paying job. Plus, you are handsome and you are educated. There is no reason for us to think otherwise. My aunt said. If you want, we can stop, my uncle said. Yes. And wait until next year. No. Well, I could understand where they were coming from. It was Japan, and traditionally, if you were financially stable and had a home, it's common sense that you would marry next. And most marriages were arranged with the parents setting up the couple. They were excited to take the role of my parents that way and find a good girl for me. I understand that. But sadly, I couldn't comply with their desire. Not by a long shot. I'm sorry, mother, father. I said, calling them with the name I should have been calling since they adopted me. But I can't marry yet. Heck, I don't know if I will ever be able to marry. I can't tell you the reason why, but I am not ready to love someone like that. I'm not ready to have a family again. I said seriously, and I could see that my words had effect on them. I couldn't have a family again. Not until I eradicate every single one of those demons. Not until I made sure they would never rob me of my treasures again. Not until I made sure I could protect my love. I see. I understand, my boy, my uncle said with a firm smile while my aunt wiped a tear from the emotions she felt when I called her mom. And we're sorry to push the topic suddenly on you before asking your opinion on it. It's fine, we will cancel everything, my uncle said, and my heart was finally at peace again. After that, we continued eating our food. The atmosphere was a lot lighter than before as we all had smiles on our faces. Even though we decided to cancel the engagement, we still need to meet them to show respect. It would be an insult if we suddenly told them we canceled it. Can you do that for me? My uncle asked, and I nodded. Good. Well, the girl's name is Mitsuri Kenroji, *slam. I slammed my hands on the table, making all of the dishes jump from the force before they scattered and fell. I stood up in an instant. Did you just say, Mitsuri? Why yes, her name's Mitsuri Kenroji, my uncle replied. Dear respected father, please next time, start with that. You nearly made me commit the biggest fumble in history. I said and wiped my lips. Then I turned around and headed towards the door. Where are you going, Seiji? Where else? To my wife's house. I said and raised my arm like I was the luckiest man in the world. I'm getting married. What? But you said, sorry, I don't hear what I said because I'm deaf. My aunt ran up to me and grabbed my hand. Let's not get too hasty, Seiji. You still need to wait a year to even legally marry. Then we just have to do it illegally because I'm ready. I said, my voice had never been firmer. After the name of the girl dropped, the situation had taken a complete turn. Mitsuri Kenroji, Seiji's POV. I ain't fumbling this one. No way. Traumas be damned. Do you remember that guy who rejected Mitsuri? You know, the one with circle spectacles who had the whole internet coming together just to hate on him and call him an idiot? Yeah, I ain't going to be like that guy. No chance I was going to fumble that badly. In all seriousness, Mitsuri Kenroji was my waifu even in my past life. So the chance of meeting her was already incredible, but having the chance to get married to her? I will just have to crown myself with the title of a fanfiction protagonist because there is no other way I could get this lucky. Even if I did not end up marrying her, I wanted to see her just once. I was a deep admirer of beauty, so I really wanted to see for myself just how beautiful she was and find out if she could compare with girls like the Kocho sisters. Not only that, I was curious to know how her body would look like since she was known to have supernatural strength since birth. So all in all, I was excited to meet her. But they live in Tokyo? I said while having flashbacks of the last time I was in Tokyo. I encountered Muzan Kibutsuji the last time I was there, and I promised myself to never visit the city again. The experience was unforgettable as it was the closest I had been to death. In the Azusa ward to be specific, my uncle said with a nod. Is there any problem? No. I shrugged. The part of me that was a simp for Mitsuri easily won against the part of me that feared Muzan. When should we go? I asked, and both my aunt and uncle looked at me weirdly. You are awfully excited about this so suddenly. Fine, if you want we can go today itself. And so, the three of us headed towards the Azusa ward of Tokyo after we finished our breakfast. Our visit would be a surprise for them since my uncle didn't know I would be so enthusiastic and therefore did not tell them. It took us the whole morning and the early afternoon to reach the ward. My uncle and aunt were not young anymore, so the journey took some time even though we took carriages in most part of the journey. Late in the afternoon, we reached the Azusa ward and came upon the Kanroji's household. The house was decently big with a huge compound surrounding their home. It was obvious that their family was well off. We entered the compound and looked around at all the flowers and trees. It reminded me of the garden back in the flower mansion. There was also a small, artificial stream with a red bridge over it to make the whole place authentic. I immediately recognized that as the place where Mitsuri was rejected many times. The servants greeted us warmly and immediately went to inform the master. It did not take long for the head of the family, Daddy Kanroji, to come out and welcome us. What an unexpected surprise. Thank you for accepting my invitation and coming so quickly. Kenji Kanroji said. Sorry for intruding out of the blue, but my son could not wait to meet your daughter, my uncle replied. Is that so? Thank you for your kindness, Seiji. I've heard great things about you and I appreciate you going along with the arrangement of us old men. Kenji said, with a small bow, and I bowed even lower to show respect. Come, let me give you a proper welcome, my friend. Kenji said and led us to the house. He and my uncle engaged in small talks as we walked. He also showed us around the compound for a bit before he brought us inside. I'm sure you all must be tired from coming all the way here. Allow us to host you for dinner, I will tell the cook to make more portions. Kenji said as we sat down in the living room. That'd be wonderful, my uncle laughed kindly. Soon, other members of the family came to the living room and we introduced ourselves. I learned that Kenji and his wife had 6 children, with Mitsuri being the middle child. Their older children were already married and were living in the same compound but at different houses. The mother of the household was an elegant older lady with beauty marks under her eyes, and oddly enough, she reminded me of my mother. My uncle and Kenji engaged in a conversation where I also participated as the main topic was about me. My aunt on the other hand was entertained by Kenji's wife Junko as they left to look at the flowers in the garden. Junko, as the mistress of the household, also had to supervise the servants cooking and working. So that left only us 3 dudes to talk. So Seiji, I heard that you are a master of kendo and you won even at national level. Tell me, have you ever considered opening a dojo? Kenji asked. Ah, my most feared question. My plan for the future. There was no plan for me. It was honestly hard to plan for the future when I was not sure I would even survive past 25. It was a weird situation. If things went according to the canon story, Muzan Kibutsuji would die in the final battle, which would take place when I was 19. If we win and I survive, maybe I would consider opening a dojo. I could teach not only swordsmanship but also breathing styles to preserve the tradition of demon slayers. I have learned all 5 major breathing styles, so I could definitely do that. Also, maybe I should preserve the history of demons and demon slayers so that the sacrifices everyone had made would not be forgotten. It would be better than becoming fictional characters in Zenitsu's story. It didn't even have to be officially recognized, it could just be a myth with enough evidence for people to believe in. That'd be interesting. Anyway, to the question, I replied with an answer I had made many years ago. I was a kendo master, which was something Japanese people respected greatly due to the samurai culture which had not completely died out yet. I was also educated. And coupled with my family's legacy as military officers, I said I planned to do the same. My achievements in kendo tournaments and my family's connection would make it easy for me to thrive there. It was a great plan. I would surely look like a boy with a good future ahead, even though in reality, I was not sure I even had a future. I planned on surviving and saving everyone, but I was also not delusional. The conversation went on as the two dudes kept glazing at me, but I was becoming quite impatient because I hadn't met the person whom I had come all the way to see. "Where is she?" I asked in my mind. It had been an hour since we arrived. "Excuse me, but can you tell me where the toilet is?" I asked out of the blue. Sure. It's that way," Kenji said, and point to the left, "Go past the corridor and turn left." "Thank you," I said, and got up before walking away. I allowed my head to turn and look around the house. My eyes released a glow as I used my X-ray vision to scan the entire house. I walked through the corridor and then I suddenly stopped when I finally saw the person I was searching for. But I saw her in a state I never expected, so I paused in surprise. Then I changed my path from the toilet to the room where I found her. In a few seconds, I stood in front of the dark room where she was in. I slid open the door. "Wah!" I heard a yelp of surprise. I looked at the young woman with black hair and beauty marks under both her eyes. I was not really focused on her appearance, instead, my attention was on her expression and the situation. "What are you doing?" I asked. My usual stoic voice might have sounded colder to her because she flinched back like a criminal being caught committing a crime. She stuttered as she looked at her own hands, which were black from dye. What I saw was not the bubbly perfect waifu that we saw in the anime. It was not the sweet and confident girl that I expected. It should have been obvious. That girl did not exist yet. That was 4 years in the future. What I got was something much more raw and real. A girl trying to be something she's not because that's the only way she thought she'd fit in. "Hello. I'm your future husband and I want to know," I said, and walked closer to her. "What are you doing? Is this love?" Third POV, she was different. She was always different from the others. But she didn't know how scary that was until she turned 15 when she faced her first rejection. That day, she learned that to be different was to be not normal. And to not be normal was to not fit in. "I don't think this can work, you are just too strange. You have no softness or gentleness a lady should possess. You are like a gorilla. My hand hurts when you hold it," was what her first fiancé said to her before canceling the arranged engagement. He said a lot, but maybe he wouldn't have said so much if he knew how much each word hurt her. Her heart bled behind a brittle smile, and that was when she realized the deep sorrow that came with rejection. He didn't want her. But who could blame him? After all, men wanted a weak woman they could protect and provide for. They wanted a woman with a healing touch of love and care. They wanted a woman who was modest. They wanted a dignified, noble lady. All of which she was not. She was a woman stronger than any man she had ever encountered. Her touch could crush rocks, they were not soft or healing. She was not modest, her generous bosoms but made her look like a shameless seductress. She was loud and ate a lot, the opposite of what a noble lady should be. She was everything she shouldn't be, and that made her sad. Mitsuri had been intrigued by romance and love ever since she was little. She had read many books and listened to stories about love and romance. Her dream was to find love someday and become a wife. She wanted to dedicate herself to a man she loved who would treasure her like the most precious jewel. She wanted to fall in love with a man who was stronger than her, someone who could protect her from anything in the world. That was the dream of her youthful self. But as she got older, she learned that her fantasy would never come true, all because she was different. But that's okay, she told herself. She could still find love. But alas, she was apparently not fit for the love she was searching for. From a young age, Mitsuri learned that love was the most important thing in the world. To love was to be human. It was the meaning behind everything in life. It could be love for an art, love for a concept, or love for other people. She thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Yet even amongst all else, romantic love, the love between husband and wife was what she wanted the most. After all, familial love made sense, friendship also made sense. But two strangers loving each other to the point of being able to sacrifice everything they had? Two unrelated people deciding to forever be together because they thought they couldn't live without the other person. That sounded so silly. It was illogical. It was beautiful and Mitsuri wanted it. But, "Mother, do you think I will ever be able to find a husband?" she asked after her fifth rejection. "Oh sweetie, I'm sure you will meet a man one day who would love you just as you are. Like me and your father do," her mother assured her. Miss Yuri stayed silent as if accepting her mother's words, but deep down, she didn't believe her. So she decided to do everything she could to fit into the ideal lady. She started dyeing her hair black and wore unflattering clothes. She also started starving herself, both to weaken her body and to behave like a proper lady. She changed herself to become a girl men would like. She was willing to kill her true self if it meant finding love. It might sound stupid to others, but it was not stupid for the future love Hashira. Everyone was born with a purpose, hers just happened to be love. But even after she changed herself, she was still getting rejected. Her suitors were still able to see past her mask. Be normal. Fit in, was what she told herself daily. She was chasing the wrong thing in her youthful nativity. It was not love that she was pursuing, at most, it was merely approval. Love was true. So even if she was accepted, it would only be a cheap imitation of love. That day, Mitsuri had another guest. It was a new suitor, one that her father talked highly about. The boy was her age and according to her father, he was the perfect fit for her. But there was one problem. They came to the house unannounced, so Mitsuri had no time to dye her hair black or to change her clothes. She had to hide in her room as she quickly changed her clothes and started smearing black paint on her bright hair. At one point she used to love her pink and green hair, they were happy and colorful, but no suitors liked it. They didn't want a wife that stood out too much. They wanted a girl with the beauty of the moon, not the big bright sun. But while she was busy dyeing her hair, the door to her room suddenly slid open and she was caught red-handed, or should she say black-handed. There he was, her next suitor. One that would reject her soon enough with how things were going. He was handsome, remarkably so. It was something she noticed immediately when she spied on him as they came to her house. But at the moment, her mind did not even register that. Her eyes froze when they greeted his bright purple ones. Those eyes saw everything. Everyone felt uncomfortable when those eyes, which seemingly felt like they could see through every secret, fell upon them. It was especially severe for Mitsuri, who was full of secret insecurities. She felt like all of her flaws were laid bare to him. She couldn't hide anything, her mask crumbled. Fear started creeping up her heart. It was a fear that a criminal would experience if they were caught committing a crime. "What are you doing?" he asked, and she flinched back. His voice was cold, he was mean. She supposed it was natural since she was trying to catfish him. Words got stuck in her throat. There was a clot of nervousness stopping them from coming out. How could she possibly speak under the gaze of those eyes? They saw through everything. He had seen her true self. "Hello. I'm your future husband and I want to know what you are doing," he said and walked close to her. "Wait, what?" Her breath hitched. That was when she noticed that there was no repulsion in his eyes even though he had seen through her. They were just really mean, but there was nothing else. No disappointment, no repulsion. There was no rejection. "I was just dyeing my hair," she said, the nervousness melting like ice in summer. "But why would you do that?" he asked. "Your hair is pink and green, it's an exotic color." Then his lips curved ever so slightly. "It's beautiful." "What?" Her hair was beautiful. That's the first time someone said that to her. Her cheeks couldn't help but burn for some reason. Her heart started racing. It was racing due to fear and embarrassment. Her stomach was doing somersaults in her belly. Is this love? She thought to herself. What she was feeling was awfully similar to what she had read in the past. Just then, her father and another man came to the scene. She looked at her father and saw his face fall as if realizing the situation. His expression showed that he thought they were done for. What is the meaning of this? The man asked. Oh, nothing, uncle. It's just that Mitsuri has something on her hair. It should be fine after she washes it off, the boy said and turned around. Sorry to disturb you, we will wait in the living room, the boy said before he pushed at the man, and they both returned to the living room. Mitsuri and her father watched them leave with wide eyes before they both looked at each other. They were both equally surprised as the anticipated rejection never came. A realization struck them in the silence. Their guests were okay with Mitsuri's appearance. Kenji smiled at his daughter. Go clean your hair quickly and come to the living room, he said in excitement. Mitsuri nodded and ran to the bathroom to clean her hair. After which she went to the living room to greet the guests and her suitor. During all this, Mitsuri's heart just won't stop beating like an engine. Her cheeks blushed and her eyes sparkled. Had she finally found someone who wouldn't reject her? Would she find love this time? New objective, Seiji's POV, pink. It was pink. Not just any pink, it was bubble gum pink, the color you would expect on Barbies and angels. Obviously, I was talking about her muscles. I don't know where your dirty little mind had gone, but I was referring to every fiber of muscles in her body. Although, I could assure you that she was pink there as well, considering how her body was mostly the color of pink. There are two types of muscles in the human body. I've said this before, they are fast twitch muscles and slow twitch muscles. Fast twitch muscles were white and slow twitch muscles were red. But there was also another muscle type which was the color of pink. Normally, you would never find this in the human body or mammals in general. The only creatures I knew had pink muscles were fishes. They require incredible strength to swim with the heavy resistance of water, so they have pink muscles. Pink muscle was the combination of red and white muscle, slow twitch and fast twitch muscle. They were a mix of the two, the best of both worlds. And apparently, Mitsuri's muscles were made entirely of said pink muscles because obviously she was just built differently. Not only that, her muscles were 8 times denser than normal. Her body was different from the extraordinary bodies I had encountered. Rengoku, whose body was bred to be a swordsman, Tengen's body was built for speed, Gyomii was simply a superior human. But Mitsuri was even more extraordinary than that. It was simply alien, something which I never even thought was possible. It was simply divine. I shifted my focus to her outer appearance and my X-ray stopped. Her facial features were delicate and cute. Much to my surprise, her beauty was comparable to that of Kane's. I said comparable because their beauty was fundamentally different from the others, so there was no way to tell who was prettier. Kane possessed an elegant beauty with sharp features that effortlessly exuded sensuality. She was like the moon. On the other hand, Mitsuri had delicate features with adorable shapes. She gave off the feeling that she should be protected. Her beauty was blinding, noticeable to anyone who looked at her general direction, unlike Kane, who got more beautiful as you looked at the detail of her face. She was like the sun. Suffice to say, I was not disappointed. The only thing left to do was try and tear my eyes away from her because I think I'd been staring for too long. My thoughts were cut short when I felt my uncle pinch me on my thighs. I blinked and returned to reality. It was then that I noticed Mitsuri shifting uncomfortably in her place. I understood my mistake immediately. Although the subject of my analysis never realized the abilities of my eyes, humans felt instinctively uncomfortable when they were so thoroughly observed. They couldn't pinpoint why, but most people had told me I have creepy eyes. And it was really not smart to stare too much at the girl who had many insecurities. Which was incredibly stupid, by the way. How the fuck was a beauty like her insecure? I never thought I would see the expression she currently had on her face. It was one of the downsides of meeting these beloved characters too soon. They had not gone through the things they were meant to go through, so they had not grown yet. I'm sorry. I was just enchanted by your beauty, I said with a straight face. I didn't mince my words. Much to my amusement, Mitsuri started getting extremely red. I could see steam rising from her head. She was adorable. Are you sure it's not because of the unusual hair color that you were staring at her? Don't be afraid to be honest, many of the previous suitors had complained about her hair, Kenji said, causing her daughter to stop blushing as she remembered some bad memories. Way to ruin my Riz daddy Kenroji. My Riz was already horrible, but you ruined even that. No, I have no problem with her hair and instead find them pretty. I actually have a friend with hair just as colorful as hers, I said. The image of Rengoku flashed in my mind. Oh, is that so? Good to hear, Kenji said with a smile. After that, silence fell between us. Mitsuri was way too shy, while my social skill level was not high enough to start a conversation with a pretty girl like her. Our respective parents were all too amused as they watched us. Now that Mitsuri is finally here, why don't you two get to know each other? Kenji said. Mitsuri dear, why don't you show Seiji around the garden? Okay, she squeaked out before standing up. She gestured to follow me and I did. We walked out of the house, leaving the two men to themselves. I followed Mitsuri to their garden and we slowly walked beside each other. That was until we walked across the red bridge above the stream. She suddenly stopped and when I noticed, I turned back to look at her. I want to apologize for what happened back there, she said and bowed down so low that I was impressed by her flexibility. It was nothing worth apologizing for. No, she shook her head, although you were okay with my unusual hair, I tried to deceive you by dyeing my hair. I'm so sorry. It was really not a big deal considering people dye their hair all the time. Even older women did it to hide their silver hair or because they didn't like their natural hair color. It was why dye existed in the first place. But I guess it was the intention that counts. I nodded. I accept your apology. She wore a blue kimono with flower patterns on it. The setting sun cast a warm orange hue over us, but the world was as bright as day when I looked at her. Her exotic pink and green hair danced to the tune of the breeze, and when she gave me a bright smile, it was almost a bit too much like someone suddenly injecting honey and syrup into your bloodstream. Too sweet. I looked away. Let's see. I need an objective here, don't I? Or else I would not be able to interact with her properly. I've already done it for Ju, so let's do this again. Let me change Mitsuri earlier than in canon and speed up her character development. The objective was to make her realize that she was enough and she didn't need to change. There were people who would accept her as she was and even treasure her because of her uniqueness. Honestly, that sounded like a problem every teenager had faced at least once in their life. Mitsuri really was the most normal one among the Demon Slayer cast, wasn't she? Are you hungry, Mitsuri? It was a question I already knew the answer to. My eyes told me that she was starving herself. Her body was not getting the appropriate nutrients that it needed. Her body needed food even more than the few beggars we encountered while coming here. Why don't we go to a restaurant to get something to eat? I asked her again. But we are going to have dinner soon, she said with a puzzled look. I shook my head. If my uncle and aunt were present, they might judge her. I wanted her to eat as much as she could, so it was better to take her to a restaurant. I want to eat with you. Only the two of us, I said, and she blinked cutely before blushing. Okay, she said, and then we both left the Kanroji compound and headed to a restaurant in the town. And that is all your order, sir. Thank you for coming to us, the chef said with a tired smile. Sweats traveled down his aged face. Omuris, pork cutlets, miso soup, rice, fish, onigiri, sakura machi etc., all kinds of foods were on the table which were meant for a family. All the foods looked like they were meant for 20 people while only Mitsuri and I sat opposite each other. Are you going to eat all of this? Mitsuri asked me with a gulp. I was deaf, but I felt like I could hear her stomach growling. We are going to eat all this, I said. We? Yes, we. I have special eyes that can see things, so I know you are hungry and your body needs the food. I said. She did not say anything, just looking at the food on the table. Why are you hesitating? The reason you were holding back was because you were afraid that your suitor wouldn't like it, right? I said, well, worry not, I am actually really attracted to girls who can eat lots of food. Really? She asked. Really, I said and picked up a sakura machi with my chopsticks and brought it close to her mouth. I remember in the anime that the reason why her hair turned pink and green was because she was eating too many sakura machi. It was her favorite food. Finally, she took the food in her mouth and she never stopped after that. Meanwhile, I simply enjoyed the incredible sight of a rather small girl eating food meant for 20 men. It was astonishing, especially with my eyes that could see everything that happened inside. I was going to teach her that it was okay to be herself. She didn't need to change, the world can change instead. Helping a waifu, Seiji's POV, holy shit, it's all gone. Call me dramatic, but I know you would react the same way after witnessing a girl finishing the amount of food meant for 20 people all by herself. It was bullshit, like many other things in this world of shounen anime. How the fuck did she weigh 56 kilograms with muscles 8 times denser than normal? All canon, by the way. How the fuck did her body digest all those foods so quickly? Where the fuck did those energy go? Honestly, I got over such illogical observations a long time ago. This world was different from my past life, their logic could not be compared. That much should be obvious when there was a demon king who looked like Michael Jackson and got his power from a flower. But still, this was one of the rare occasions when I was shocked. Her body was just a fucking mystery even with my eyes. It did not follow common logic. How the fuck can it do that? Why the fuck was it so beautiful? I wanted to explore it. Mitsuri blushed a deep shade of red while looking down at the ground. She had finally come to her senses after finishing all the food. She released a cute little burp after which she immediately covered her lips. Even though I told her she could eat as much as she wanted, there was guilt and shame on her face. You know what, maybe the gods gave me all the wealth I had just so that I could provide for this little glutton wrapped in a fluff of cuteness, and, I am always 2 steps ahead, you finished it all, I said. Maybe my voice came out more bewildered than expected because she shrunk even smaller and nodded. That's amazing. You ate it all. I said as genuine laughter rolled off my throat. It was rare that I would laugh. Mitsuri seemed to realize that too, even though she'd only known me for a few hours. Her big round eyes gawked at me like they were looking at the strangest sight. I didn't even get to eat anything. She inclined her head. I am so sorry. Don't sweat it. We still have dinner waiting for us anyway. I said. I couldn't even order more because the shop literally served us everything they had. This was also why there were no onlookers to gawk at Mitsuri like she was an animal in the zoo. I made sure to send all possible distractions away before letting her indulge in her food. Let's return, I said, and we both left the restaurant. We returned to the Kanroji compound just in time for dinner, and believe it or not, Mitsuri was still able to eat a normal portion of food after all that. Dinner was a joyous affair. My uncle and Kenji were old friends, and that was evident. With the 2 men of the family getting along, the rest of the members did too. Stories about when Mitsuri and I were young were shared. Mitsuri's parents especially had a lot of things to talk about and many tales to tell. She was kind of like the odd one in the family, in a good way. Her parents said she was nothing like her other siblings, so she had plenty of fun stories. My uncle and aunt also shared stories of how I grew up. Mine were not as humorous or fun as Mitsuri's, but they were remarkable achievements. As a reincarnated person and a prodigy, I was extremely mature for my age when I was young and achieved many impressive feats. I was a little sad that my uncle and aunt did not have a funny story to share about me. At that time, I was laser-focused on getting stronger, so I sacrificed my childhood. I barely even spent time with them. But even with all that, they were always so kind and understanding. They didn't ask anything in return while I was suspicious of them and chalked their kindness to them wanting my inheritance. They never stopped loving me. But here I was, still calling them uncle and aunt even in my mind. Forget addressing them as mother and father, I haven't even acknowledged their names. I was bitter. My suspicions, thinking I was smarter than everyone else and the barrier I erected around me were just a way for me to cope because truthfully, I never wanted to love again at that time. I didn't want to have a family again, because the pain I felt when it was taken from me was too much, too unbearable. I didn't want heaven if it meant risking hell. I just wanted to be fine. But those fears were slowly dying as strength grew in its place. As I was gaining the power to protect my family and ensure it was not taken from me again, the barriers slowly crumbled away. So I hoped in the future, we could get even closer. Anyway, after dinner, we stayed for a little while longer and the important question was imposed upon me. So Seiji, what do you think of my daughter? Did you get along well? Kenji asked the question. Although my parents had arranged the meeting, it was still ultimately my decision whether I was engaged with Mitsuri or not. Kenji was asking for an answer to that. If I didn't like her, I would say something like praising her daughter or say things like how I wanted to get to know her better. I shouldn't outright say that I didn't want to marry her as that would be a great insult. Basically, if I didn't say I wanted her as a wife, it would be the same as rejection. Anything other than confirmation would be taken as rejection. So what did I say? She'd make a lovely wife. I was not sure where I was going with this or whether I truly wanted to spend the rest of my life with Mitsuri, but I left that for 20-year-old me who by that time would have probably ended the demon war or died trying. But the reactions I got from Mitsuri and her parents made me glad I accepted. Mitsuri herself had a small and earnest smile with tears of joy while her parents were truly glad to find someone who did not reject their daughter instantly. After that, we left the Kanroji household. Since it was too late to go home, we went to an inn nearby where we all spent the night. The next morning we went home. Although the engagement was seemingly done, we were not rushing it. I was not even legally able to marry yet, so marriage was still a thing in the far future. All in all, it was a great experience. The next day, I think this was the first time I had ever been on a proper date. Shinobu and I would go out at night to hunt and experiment on demons while Kane and I had gone on a joint mission on more than one occasion, but those were not dates. Mitsuri and I were currently walking around the compound. We had just returned from the market and now we were taking a peaceful stroll in the garden. She had gotten noticeably comfortable around me but she was still guarded and hesitant to be her true cheery self. I was able to get a glimpse of it but at the moment she was still hiding in fear of rejection. While we were walking past the huge stacking boulders near the stream, an idea suddenly struck me. I stopped walking and looked at the stones. Seiji? Mitsuri, do you think you are stronger than me? I asked suddenly and she blinked in surprise. What makes you say that? No reason. I was just curious. I said. You are a man, of course, you'd be stronger than me, she said, but my eyes see through her lies easily. Now it was not just a matter of helping her. The fact that she thought I was weaker genuinely rubbed my ego the wrong way. Let's show her that she was not the only one with special talent. I went ahead to one of the smaller boulders. It was around the size of a car wheel and would probably weigh around close to 100 kilograms. I picked it up with ease and put it over my head. Ah! Mitsuri gasped softly in surprise. I put down the stone in front of her and said, now you try. She was hesitant at first but seeing how I easily picked the stone up, she thought it would not be a problem if she did the same. She didn't know that the stone was already heavy enough that no normal man would even be able to lift it. She picked it up and also put it above her head. I was genuinely surprised at the ease with which she threw the weight up. My eyes glowed purple as I watched her pink muscles produce raw strength like it was their sole purpose. That was good. But how about this one? I said before grabbing another boulder, a bigger one this time, and lifting it up again with no effort. Muscles trained with the eyes of the transparent world since when I was a child were nothing less of perfection. It won't lose to her pink muscles. Or maybe it will. I thought to myself when I saw her easily throw up the weight again. For some reason, I found that extremely hot. Did I have a thing for strong women? I couldn't help but imagine a child between us. What if he inherited my eyes and talent with her body? Wouldn't he basically be the second coming of Yorichi? If I didn't end Musen, he probably would. Anyway, Mitsuri and I entered a contest of strength. Although hesitant at first, Mitsuri became increasingly competitive as I was able to match her strength with no real struggle on my part. In the end, I was the winner. Although she had an incredible body, she had never trained in her life while I had trained for more than half my life. Plus I did a lot of training with boulders during my training with Gyomii. I was not exactly normal either, so it was natural for her to lose. Mitsuri's labored breath came with smoke. Her cheeks were flushed red and sweat covered her body. Although part of it was because she was tired from all the lifting, most of it was because, oddly enough, she was very turned on at the moment. Her eyes shone with lust as she looked up at me from the ground she sat on. I don't think she even realized what she was feeling. And I probably wouldn't too if not for my eyes that saw everything. So she has a strength fetish? I made a mental note in my head while scratching my cheeks helplessly. I sat down beside her and waited for her to calm down, which she eventually did after 10 minutes. You are very different from other girls, you know that, right? I said suddenly. The mind was clear after a good workout, so she immediately perked up. Her brain processed my words quickly. Yes. Do you know how you are different? I asked. She stayed silent for a few seconds before she confessed with eyes looking down, no other girls are as strong as me, nor do they eat as much as I do. Unlike them, I am not elegant. I am not ladylike, she said with sad eyes. Are you sad about that? I asked and she nodded. Well, you shouldn't be. I said, it means that you are special and all of the people who rejected you are merely envious. You don't have to change and pretend to be someone you are not, Mitsuri. Do you want to live your whole life as someone you are not? No. I don't want that, she said after a thoughtful silence. Then stop pretending. I said, you know, I was told that I would meet you 2 days ago, but I don't think I've really met you. I promise you, after you start being true to yourself, you will find that there are people in this world who will not only accept you but love you for who you really are. Really? Her voice was shaky and I could see tears forming in her eyes. Yes. There are your parents and also. I said and pointed at myself, there is this guy. It was not a lie. Although I met her only a few days ago, I have known her since my past life. I absolutely loved her character when I watched the anime. Her bright personality and bubbly attitude were a huge contrast to the tragic themes of the anime. Even in an intense fight against the upper moons, she was unapologetically being herself. While everyone fought out of hatred and revenge, she was the only one fighting because of her love for her friends and the Demon Slayer Corps. I was always attracted to that, probably because I was so hateful. Thank you, she whispered softly as her tears finally flowed down her eyes like a dam. Then she lunged at me and her arms tightly wrapped around my torso, knocking the breath out of me. Thank you so much, she said and cried in my chest. It was easier than I expected. I wonder how much she needed to hear those words. No problem, Mitsuri. I said and patted her head. She continued bawling her eyes out and she hugged me even tighter. But her giant balloon breast acted as a cushion, so I was not hurt even with her insane squeezing strength. It felt amazing. I'll take this as my reward. End of vacation, Seiji's POV, 1 month later, Seiji. Mitsuri called out while she ran up to me with the smilest smile on her face. Her eyes met mine, but I didn't meet hers. Instead, my eyes were locked on something else. Ever heard of jiggle physics? Well, that shit was even more magnificent in an anime world. My eyes could not focus anywhere else. God, I love gravity. But you know what's even better? When it was in slow motion. God, I love my eyes. She reached me after a few seconds because I refused to move from my spot. Forget running up to her, I had to resist the urge to create distance so that I could enjoy the sight a little longer. Did I keep you waiting for long? She was able to ask without missing a breath even after running up to me. Nope, you are right on time. As always. I said, and she tilted her head to the side before pushing out her chest, making them jiggle again and appear bigger. I think she knew I liked them. There she stood in front of me, Mitsuri Kenroji, in all her glory. Without a mask, without a lie. It took a month, but at last, I got to meet her. And she was beautiful. She wore a long black skirt with a white top and a haori over her dress. She was dressed in a very modern fashion, which was a trend these days in cities like Tokyo. But she wore it because it was easier to move compared to a kimono and it felt more comfortable. Her hair was bright exotic pink with green ends that seemed to shine alongside the sun. Coupled with her bubbly attitude and her dress, she attracted many eyes. But she did not shrink under those gazes and only smiled at mine. What are we going to do today, Seiji? She asked with excitement in her eyes. We have been going on many dates this month to get to know each other better, so there was not much that we haven't done. Be it going to parks, trying out different restaurants or riding a train, we've done most of the things that could be done in the city. So today, I thought of something unique. We are going to the mountains, I said, and Mitsuri blinked her emerald eyes, unsure if that was exciting or not. In the end, she seemed to come to the conclusion that anything with me would be fun, so she grinned. Let's go then. She said before pulling me forward and leading me somewhere as if she knew where we would be going. I kept myself from telling her that we were going in the opposite direction. In the bustling city of Tokyo, Mitsuri led me through the streets for a while until she eventually stopped and turned back with a blushing face. The mountain is this way, right? I chuckled, which only made her more embarrassed. We left the city of Tokyo and went to the mountains. I have been there before, and I cleared a small path through the forest when I planned this date. The only problem was the hiking, which was not really a problem for us with our superior physique. We didn't even break a sweat. I led her to beautiful places in the forest like a flower garden, a small pond, or places with beautiful sceneries. All of which I knew because I liked beautiful places. It was a great experience for Mitsuri, who was a city girl and spent her life in urban areas. We even encountered a few animals while we hiked up the mountain, a friendly deer, timid rabbits, and a cute little fox. She was enjoying the date. The only time I saw her smile wider was when we were on a food tour where we tried every bakery in the city of Tokyo. We spent the entire afternoon in the mountains, enjoying the isolation and peace that the city could not provide. It was just the two of us, and Mitsuri seemed to be very conscious about that, considering she blushed a lot today than other days. In the end, we finally reached the peak of the highest mountain where a picnic basket awaited us. There were food and other things that I left yesterday and were protected by yours truly, Raven, from other animals while I was away. Then Mitsuri proceeded to flex her cooking skills by making food with the items and ingredients. As someone who liked eating, she was great at making food. We sat down in a comfortable spot and enjoyed our time while eating. We stayed like that for nearly an hour before the sun finally began to set. It was the end of the day and the beginning of my favorite time. Sunset. We enjoyed the sunset together. The sun sank into the horizon, giving the last warmth of sunshine in the color of thick honey and the promise of rising once more. The sun, which had shone so brightly, finally rested behind the mountains, signifying the end of another day which can never be reclaimed. Darkness descended to the world, but only for a moment, as countless stars took the place of the sun in the sky. They glittered like gems in the sky, finally getting the time to shine after being outshined by the sun. They seemed to be competing for the spotlight as they spread infinitely in the endless expanse above. The moon hung in the air, its gentle ray replacing the sun's. The transition between day and night, the blue sky and the black sky, was an incredible scene that I never got tired of witnessing. "It's beautiful," Mitsuri said, her green eyes were able to reflect the beauty of the sky. "It is." I agreed. "Thank you for bringing me here." I smiled. She was always so grateful for every good thing that happened to her. It was one of her greatest traits. We peacefully sat under the night until Raven suddenly flew towards me and sat on my head. I was surprised since she had not done this ever since I was on vacation. But then what she told me shifted my entire mood in an instant. "Demon. Seiji?" Mitsuri instantly called my name when she felt the sudden shift in my mood, but I did not respond. My eyes started glowing purple as I turned my neck to look in the direction where the demon was coming from. My eyes pierced through the thick jungle and skipped the distance before locking on the body of the disgusting creature. The demon did not know why, but he flinched when my eyes landed on him. A foreboding emerged in his vile heart, but he was too stupid to heed the warning his instincts were no doubt giving him. He continued making his way towards us. "Seiji? What happened?" she asked while nudging my shoulder. "You're making me scared." She was a very emphatic girl, so even though she did not know what was happening, she could feel it through me. "It's nothing, don't worry," I said and got up from the blanket on the floor. Then I made my way to a tree and grabbed my sword, which was propped against it. I knew something like this could happen, so I left my sword here yesterday. I felt more complete when I had the sword in my hand than when I did not. By then Mitsuri had come up to me, so I told her to stay behind me. Even before a minute passed, the demon reached us. He walked out of the forest and came to the clearing. Well, what do we have here?" the demon said while licking his lips. The demon was around 7 feet tall with a very muscular body. His eyes were completely red and demonic, and he had 3 horns on his head. I could tell at a glance that he was stronger than ordinary demons. If I had to guess, he was the demon that ruled over the territory of Tokyo. Strong demons had their own hunting grounds and territories after all, just like top predators. If it is not a couple having a romantic time in the mountains alone. The demon said in evil amusement, not knowing that they just served themselves on a silver platter. "Seiji." Mitsuri whispered, her body trembled and she lightly tugged at my haori. "What is that?" She was scared, and understandably so. She had never seen a demon in her life, and the one before us was especially intimidating with his hulking stature. "That's a demon." I said, "Don't worry, it won't hurt you while I'm here." Her body stopped trembling and I could see her heart calming down after my words. Whatever it was that stood before us, my words were enough to comfort her. That was incredibly adorable. I thought in my mind, and I couldn't help but smile. I never smiled genuinely in the presence of a demon before. She always made me do the most shocking things with no effort whatsoever. "Oh, you know about demons? That makes me wonder," he started, and his voice got incredibly low. I could see the vibration. "Why you are not running away?" Silence hung in the air after his words fell. A chilling breeze blew upon us. Then I broke the silence. "I pity you." "Huh," he mumbled, confused. Then I grabbed the hilt of my sword and stepped 1 foot forward to get into a stance. I did not explain my sentence, but I thought in my mind, how unfortunate he was to encounter a Hashira while he was on vacation. He truly had bad luck. But I suppose that's karma. "Wait, that sword," he said, and his eyes shook with rage and veins popped around his eyes. "Are you a demon slayer?" I took a breath as insane volumes of air filled my lungs. Then I exhaled in a pattern that was unlike any singular style of the 5 major breathing styles that I have learned. The pattern was a mix between 2 breathing styles. My body cut through the air, faster than the speed of sound. My attack had no sound because it could not catch up to me. I was too fast for the demon to notice me. Wind breathing and thunder breathing were the fastest breathing styles. When mixed together, I was able to attain speed, unlike anything the demon had ever seen. I was easily faster than even the sound Hashira. My blade swung at an even faster speed. Discarding air resistance, my blade bit into the demon before it could even think. In the next instant, I was behind the demon and time resumed like normal. A loud explosion of sound followed, but the sound was so high-pitched that it was impossible to hear with the human ears. But the animals living in the mountain all reacted to the sound. The demon's face split into three before his entire head slid off his neck. Soon after, his body also started falling apart as it was cut into 100 pieces by the wind blades. It was the speed of thunder-breathing first form, thunderclap and flash mixed with the violent waves of wind-breathing seventh form, gale, sudden wave. The result was a catastrophe that happened in less than a second. Ha! I released a sigh and sheathed my sword after the demon was reduced to dust. It has been 3 months since I took the vacation after my 16th birthday. I guess this was the universe's way of telling me that I needed to return. It's time to end my vacation. And I guess I have a little explaining to do, I said and turned to Mitsuri, who was not terrified at all. Her cheeks were flushed red and her breath was haggard and she was excited. But most importantly, why is she looking at me like that? Breaking the news to Mitsuri, Seiji's POV, I guess I have a little explaining to do, I said, but then I stopped when I saw the state she was in. Her eyes had a primal glint in them, her cheeks flushed and her breath came out needy. A quick glance at her with the transparent world and I saw her womb throbbing and her walls clenched. Is she? No. She is fucking turned on right now. Holy shit, like girl, I know you have a fetish for strong men, but what the hell is this? I thought while looking at her. But then again, maybe it's not so strange considering one of her main reasons for joining the Demon Slayer Corp was to find a husband, a man stronger than her. And what was in front of her was the strongest Hashira, so I couldn't fault her. Are you okay? I asked, lacing fake concern in my voice. I like her hot and bothered, to be honest, since it was due to me anyway. Ah, she gasped and came back to reality. A massive blush found her cheeks and her innocence won over her fetish. I'm okay, she muttered, gathering her bearings. She shook her head and the last thought of indecency left her head as questions replaced them. Seiji, what was that? That was a demon, I answered. A demon? Like from folktales and books? They are similar, except demons are real, as you just saw, I said and gave a comforting smile when I saw fear emerge on her face. Don't be afraid, there are people like me, the demon slayers, who protect society from these demons. Her pretty eyes locked with mine and I could see thoughts swirling behind them as she processed my words. She tore her eyes away and looked at the place where the demon previously lay, sliced into many pieces, but it was no longer there. She gulped. I trust you, was her final reply. Adorable. Why is she so adorable? I walked forward and gave her a hug. She was surprised at first before she melted in my embrace and her arms snaked around my body to hug me back. Let's return, your parents would be worried by now, I said. And it was not really appropriate for a woman to stay with a man after the sun was down, even if they were engaged. It could even destroy their reputation. If we suddenly broke the engagement, she would have a harder time finding a suitor just because she was with a man even after the sun fell. It's just the culture. Japanese put purity in high regard, especially for women. It was the greatest virtue she could have. We walked down the mountain and I used the time to answer her question and explain the hidden war that had been ongoing for hundreds of years now. The war between demons and demon slayers. I explained to her what demons were, how the sun's rays were deadly to them and how they needed the flesh of humans to survive. Why human flesh though? Can't they just eat animals like us? She asked. It was a genuine question that made me hum in thought. Probably because they are still part human and their body need human flesh in particular for sustenance. Their stomachs could also be only attuned to digesting human flesh. Or most likely, humans just taste better than any other meat and it could increase their strength as well. She was intrigued by the demon slayers as well. Demons can regenerate and heal from most weapons except ones that are made from a special ore called scarlet ore, which is found on the top of mountains absorbing sunlight. You want to see it? I said and put my sword forward. She became flustered instantly. No. No. It's okay, she said. It was considered a show of great respect and trust if a samurai allowed you to touch and see his sword. It was considered a part of Thier's soul and it meant the samurai allowed you to see Thier's soul. It was an act that showed a close relation, an intimate one especially if it was to a woman. I didn't really care about those though. After the Meiji Restoration, such traditions were stopped but since that was recent, it still exists today. Here, it's okay, I don't mind. I said with a smile and shoved it in her hand so she could take a look. It was not that I took the culture seriously but she did, and I wanted to see her blush more. She carefully examined my odachi in her hand. Even with her limited knowledge, she could feel that it was a masterpiece, a weapon above the rest. It's heavy, she commented. Was it? I've been using it since I was 13 years old so I go used to the weight. The muscle structure of my body also developed to carry and swing the long blades so at this point, it felt like normal katana to me. After that, she carefully returned the sword to me. So this demon slayer, are they strong? She asked me. Yes, they are strong. Extremely so when compared to normal people, the Hashiras are able to do feats no ordinary man would believe in their life. I said. Incredible, she said. Are they even stronger than you? I paused my steps and Mitsuri did too after she noticed. She looked back, a little worried that I might not like her question for whatever reason. I only flashed her a smile. I always wanted to do this. No. After all. I said, I am the strongest. PFTT, that sounds sillier than I thought. I said with a chuckle. She seemed to be impressed though, and she believed me. Not that it was a lie. With my mixed breathing, I could now speedbliz even the likes of Jyomiai. Let's hurry. I said. Coming. I'm a coward. Did you ever notice? Almost all of the connections and bonds I have formed in this life was with characters I have known in the past. I was not brave enough to form deep connections with people I was not aware of, real people whom I never knew as a character. Because the last time I bonded with random people my family I lost them and I had never mourned harder for a loss. That's why I'm afraid now. The characters I knew from my past life I was aware of their future somewhat. I knew when they would die, when they would be in danger and I also knew they were strong, most of them being Hashiras or future Hashiras. This decreased the risk of me losing them significantly. It was one of the reasons why I never formed a close relationship with my aunt and uncle. They were weak and I had no clue about what would happen to them in the future. There was too much risk in loving them too much. On the flip side, this was why I easily formed a connection with Mitsuri. She was strong, and a future Hashira. She only died at the end of the canon story so there was a low risk for loving her. She shouldn't die randomly. She was strong, I was here and fate was on her side. But now I found myself questioning this mindset. What if my existence had changed the future too much at this point? What if her survival was not certain anymore? I'm not sure I want Mitsuri to become a demon slayer. It was a strange change in my mindset because I had every intention of being the one to introduce her to the Demon Slayer Corporation. She viewed it as a family in the canon, a place that accepts and values her. The thought of bringing her with me after I returned even crossed my mind. But now I was against it. It was strange because I had no problem with Rengoku being a demon slayer and a Hashira's even knowing it would lead to his death, and I consider him my best friend. Did this overprotectiveness stem from the fact that I viewed her as a wife already and wanted to protect her? I'm not sure. But all thoughts aside, I think it's time to end all this. I need to leave now, I have duties to fulfill. So I broke the news to my uncle and aunt first. They were initially surprised but it did not take them long to accept the fact that I was not done with my travels. I was sure that Mitsuri's parents wouldn't have a problem as well since I couldn't even marry legally yet. But the main problem lies in Mitsuri. How would she take the news? So today, I called her to a restaurant that had great dessert. Let's see how this goes. A hopeless romantic, third POV, Mitsuri. Mitsuri was a hopeless romantic all her life. She dreamed of love, she hoped for love, and so she had a great expectation for love and how it would feel like. So would you believe me if I said it was better than she ever expected? Because it was. To love someone romantically was vastly different and exactly how she imagined it would be. Love was not butterflies in her stomach, it was her stomach doing somersaults. Love was not being flawless to earn it, it was being loved despite the flaws. Love was not about looking perfect, it was the perfect way she was seen. Love was not about who is stronger, it's the safety she found in his arms. It was not a soft caress like she hoped but a violent pull, one that left her breathless but alive despite the lack of air. Love was beautiful. More than she'd ever hoped it would be. A month ago, she wouldn't believe it. She wouldn't believe that she would be so fulfilled, she wouldn't believe how perfect she felt now even when she was far from it. She tried to be like other girls. She tried to fit in. She was dyeing her hair black and ate less to become weaker and appear more elegant. She was trying to hide all the aspects he loved about her. Such a silly thing. He liked her. No, like he really, really likes her. Not the horrible disguise that she was putting on, just her. And that was more liberating than she could put into words. It was different from her family's love. Her father and mother loved her as a daughter, her siblings loved her as a sister. Even if someone else had taken her place, and another was born instead of her, they would still love that person the same because she would still be their daughter and sister. But his love was different. He loved her because she was herself. Knowing that, she felt enough. Knowing that, she realized she didn't need to fit in. Who cares about other people? Who cares about other men? Only he was everything and more. This mindset was quite different from her canon counterpart where she was comfortable with her own skin and found a place in the Demon Slayer Corps. But the outcome was the same, her being true to herself, so Seiji did not even notice. Or does he even love me back? Her legs which had been kicking came to a stop and her jolly mood suddenly shattered like glass with that single question. She had the habit of getting ahead of herself and living in her own delusions. So, did Seiji love her back or not? At least, he must love me a little, right? She said while looking up at the ceiling as she lay on her bed, futon. It had been a month and he had not rejected her yet. He had also invited her more frequently to dates and from what he said, he was happy with the engagement. That should imply that he definitely loves her back, right? At least he must love her a little. She was delusional sometimes, but she was not so out of touch with reality that she would expect him to love her as much as she did or as quickly as she did. Because as it was already said, Mitsuri was a hopeless romantic all her life. Falling for him was about the easiest thing she'd ever done, as if she was born to do so. But she hoped he loved her back even just a little, like how he loves a puppy, or is that too much because he really loves puppies, she noticed. I don't know. I don't know. She said, rolling around the bed, the emotions in her heart demanded action. She looked like she'd gone mad. But I guess that's what happens when a girl experiences her first love. It was like the first seed on a fertile, virgin soil. Right then, Mitsuri heard something knock at her door. She was surprised at first, and a little scared. But when she heard repeated knocking/pecking sounds, she left her bed and slid open the door. Ah, Raven, she was surprised to see the black sparrow in the middle of the night. The bird gave her a dead stare as if it was not too amused at her existence. Mitsuri felt like she had wronged the bird somehow by her mere presence in this world. Then she noticed the letter the bird had on her feet. She beamed a smile, it was probably Seiji. There was a lack of communication in this world, so he would often send Raven to give letters. Usually, the letter would contain the time and place where they would meet for a date, so Mitsuri took the letter and eagerly opened it. She was not disappointed as she saw a time and place for a meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow, but we had a date today, she said in surprise before a wide smile took over her face. They only went on dates for 2 to 3 times a week. This was the first time they would meet 2 days in a row. Did he really miss her that much already? Did he want to see her again so soon? Such thoughts swirled in her mind. The bird's eyes got more dead when it saw Mitsuri's smile. She turned around and quickly flew away from the happy girl. Oh, he really loves me, she said and held the letter near her heart. Now she had to sleep quickly so that tomorrow could come sooner. The next day, I have to leave. I know this is sudden but there is no better way to say it. Chato fucking Matt, please. I'll miss you. Miss her. She'll probably die. I plan on leaving today so this will probably be the last time we see each other for a while. Seiji's POV, we were in a cafe, or kisseton as it was called here. Many cafes were emerging all around Japan due to the Western influence and this was just one of them. Mitsuri sat across from me and she was enjoying her castella. She cupped her cheek with one hand while using a fork to feed herself with the other. She would also give me a melodious hum of satisfaction which I truly wished I could hear, but I could tell it was pretty just from the vibrations. Castella was expensive as hell for no reason and she wanted 10. But seeing her eat like that was worth every yen. Is it good? She replied with a nod as her mouth was stuffed with the sponge cake, but she gave me a radiant smile that was just as loud as any yell of affirmation would be. I returned a small smile and sipped my tea. I enjoyed watching her eat because she was beautiful but she didn't show any discomfort because she had gotten used to my staring. We enjoyed the early rays of the morning sun in the cafe. But by the time the sun had fully risen, it was time to drop the bad news to her. Mitsuri, the reason why I called you here was because I wanted to tell you something. I began and I watched every movement of her face to read her reaction. I have to leave. Her face just froze. I could not read her at all because all her facial expressions just froze like ice. I know this is sudden but there is no better way to say it, I said, but still, I saw no reaction from her. Even her heart completely halted its beat. I'll miss you. I plan on leaving today so this will probably be the last time we see each other for a while, I said and finally, she exploded. I was deaf but even I knew that was loud. What? Leaving? Why? Where? She slammed against the table and stood up before bombarding questions at me but I put a finger on her lips to silence her. I also pushed her boobs to stop them from jiggling because I did not want to be distracted by them while we were on a serious topic. Settle down please, it won't make much of a difference if you scream, I said. She took a deep breath and settled back into her seat. She leaned forward, using her boobs as a pillow while she brought her face close to mine. Maybe she hoped to seek answers behind my eyes with how intently she was looking at me. Why? That was the most important question to her. I could see cracks of vulnerability on her face when she asked. She probably wondered if she did something wrong or if I was fed up with her. It was nothing like that, I made sure to show that with gentle eyes. Remember what I told you yesterday? She nodded. I am a demon slayer and the strongest amongst them, which means I am important. I have been taking a break for 3 months now. It is time for me to return to my duty. I said. I see, she said and withdrew from my face. A silence settled between us and I allowed her to process what was said, the little that was said. In only just a month, our relationship had seen much growth. Her because I was the one who helped her get over her issues and me because I knew her and liked her from my previous life. Our time together was unlike the time I spent with Kane, Shinobu, or any other person because when we hung out, we did it solely to get to know each other and to enjoy the other's company. There were no jobs or missions in between. When will you come back? She finally asked after some time. I'll visit frequently. I replied, it's not like we won't see each other again, only that the time between our meetings will be longer. The area around the city was under my territory anyway, so it wouldn't be much trouble to visit her monthly when we get breaks. There isn't anything much I can do, is there? She finally said with a helpless smile. It saddens me to see her so down. I'm afraid not, I said and reached out to pat her head. Her hair was soft and fluffy like a weird mix between silk and cotton. It's okay. Like you said, we'll meet again, she said, more to herself than to me. I knew she had a lot more things to say which she pushed down because she was not brave enough to say it. Her beating heart, her throat contraction and her breath told me so. But she was afraid of annoying me by being too clingy, and she felt that it was not in her place to tell me what to do when we were just fiancés. A part of me wanted to bring her with me, but more of me wanted her to stay and be safe. I was here now and I could work to cover everything she would have contributed if she became a Hashira. She didn't need to be in danger, she didn't need to fight when she didn't like fighting. Enough of this heavy mood. This will be our last date for a while, so let's enjoy it, I said, and she joined my enthusiasm not long after. Yeah. Let's go have the best time ever. And so, we left the cafe to start the date. Since we wanted to enjoy ourselves as much as possible. We did what both of us liked. Cloth shopping. And I'll cut anyone who says it's gay. If you remember, I was quite a fashion enthusiast since I appreciated appearance and beauty. This was also not just any cloth shopping, it was kimono shopping. We went to the most popular shopping district, which was known for its kimono, both handmade and machine-made. They had everything from plain colors to the most colorful ones, ranging from dirt cheap ones to noble luxurious ones. We both tried many different kimonos and asked each other for opinions. Mitsuri was into the colorful ones with patterns while I preferred plain ones with nifty designs and the right measurements. Because in my opinion, no matter how beautiful it was, as long as it did not fit you perfectly and complement your shape, it was only a disappointment. A rainbow vomit if I were honest. To my eyes, such imperfection was triggering and the opposite of beauty and elegance. Why don't you try this? I said, showing her a pink kimono with good patterns. Pink suits you. Okay, she said before taking it and running to the changing room. When she came out again, I had a thoughtful look. I was facing a problem. She looked good in absolutely everything. It didn't matter what kimono she wore, she looked extremely beautiful. Clothes were meant to make you beautiful, but she made clothes beautiful instead. Her body had the perfect proportions, she was built like a hentai heroine. Small shoulders, generous breasts, and then she had a small waist and wide childbearing hips that created the famous hourglass figure. That's not all, as your gaze lowered, you would be met with thick supple thighs and a perfect rear the shape of a heart. It makes me want to write a wish fulfillment fanfiction. That time I got reincarnated as Mitsuri's favorite chair. We'll take that too, I said to the owner of the store. That too? Why don't you just buy the whole store at this point? Ha ha ha, she laughed while she held a mountain of kimono. I simply stared at her, contemplating. Wait, seriously? In the end, Mitsuri convinced me not to buy the store. She picked 2 kimonos that she liked and said she didn't need more. I ended up buying one for myself as well, plus a new haori which was not fully white but had purple cubic patterns for decoration. After we were done shopping, we went to a kabuki theater to watch a play. I proposed to watch a normal play, but Mitsuri, being the sweetheart that she was, said she preferred to watch a shadow play. She chose this while keeping my deafness in mind. There was no dialogue in shadow play and it relied on visual storytelling, so she thought it would be a better experience for me. We watched the shadow play, enjoying ourselves with the story of 2 couples who got separated by the horrors of war. I was worried that it might have a tragic ending and make her not only sad but compare our situation with the story, but luckily, they both survived and married and lived happily after the war. Finally, we ended the date with how we began, food. We visited a total of 6 restaurants where we both ordered a normal quantity of food. We created this perfect strategy in our earlier dates. We get to try the foods of different restaurants while not attracting any unwanted attention from the sheer amount of food we consume. Well, mostly Mitsuri, but I ate well above the standard as well. After the end, I walked Mitsuri to her home. We also indulged in the absolute debauchery of unprotected hand-holding as we walked. "Why are you looking at me so intently, silly?" Mitsuri asked while we walked in the calm of the evening. "I was just wondering, where all the food went. Your stomach remains completely flat," I said while looking at her belly. She blushed deep red much to my amusement, but then her eyes shone with a hint of mischief and the desire to get back at me. "I don't know, maybe here," she said and suddenly shoved her boobs up. But much to her disappointment, my face was stone cold. "Call me Alex Piera." Or maybe not, because she had a teasing smile on her face, much like Kane. Impossible. My face would never betray me. "You're so cute when you blush," she said, and I was genuinely caught off guard. Was she verbally teasing me back? She never did that. Was it because we won't see each other for a while? Nevertheless, who's blushing? I'm not blushing. The proof was in her eyes. When I looked at my reflection in her emerald eyes, my face was absolutely stoic. She smiled wider and pinched my ear. Only when her fingers touched my ears did I notice how cold her fingers were. Or were my ears heating up? They are, aren't they? Don't tell me people could see me blush from my ears all this time. What am I, a fucking tsundere waifu? I covered my ears instantly, causing her to giggle. "Har har, very funny," I said, keeping my hands on my ears. Maybe I should grow my hair just to hide it. A few minutes passed and we reached the Kanroji compound. God, why did her house have to be so close? I wouldn't mind if it was still a couple 100 miles away. "Well, this is it," she said and folded her arms behind her back. She turned around and faced me. "Goodbye, Seiji. Goodbye, Mitsuri." She smiled and waited for a few seconds longer than necessary, as if she were waiting for something. I knew what she was waiting for, and I was hoping for it too. But my dumbass remained rooted in place like a whole tree. She released a breath she didn't know she was holding. Nothing happened. "Come on, aren't you gonna do it?" my mind questioned me. "Bye," she whispered and turned around. Then she walked away. Before she left an arm's reach, I grabbed her hand and gave a small tug. She released a cute yelp and spun around to land on my chest. The moment she looked up, I leaned down and gave her a small peck on her lips. It was brief, it was soft and a little wet. It was perfect. I fucking did it. Mitsuri quickly turned beet red in my arms, and I know this was out of the script, but I leaned in and gave her another peck on her lips. This time, I felt it more clearly. Her lips were warm and they were like the most tender petal of a flower. Finally, I released her. "I'll see you again soon," I said, and my shamelessness suddenly ran out. I had used up all of my courage and the few I borrowed from God knows where. So with the speed of the fastest Hashira, I fled the scene like a criminal who had just committed a crime. It was my first kiss. I would regret running away years later because that was not cool at all. But we all had our first kiss at some point, right? So you guys should understand me. It was nerve-wracking, on par with peeking at Musen Kibutsuji. Important note, the reason Seiji's romantic development with Mitsuri is much quicker than Kane and Shinobu is that the Kocho sisters never made any advances on him. Shinobu liked their friendship and never really made a move other than secretly crushing on him. Kane is at the stage of denial where she holds herself back from loving her sister's crush/best friend. On the other hand, Mitsuri is all in on it. She laid her feelings bare for Seiji to see, without holding back. She knows what she wants to love and to be loved. In the anime too, we see her trying everything she could to change just so she would find love and a husband. It is also both their first love and experience, so things develop quickly. Mitsuri is the love Hashira for a reason. The Kocho sisters would need to up their game if they don't want him to be snatched by Mitsuri. The return of the main character, Seiji's POV. At the crack of dawn, I left the city of Tokyo with a small smile and a heavy heart. I thought I would never say this, but I was going to miss the city, even with the high possibility of Musenkiputsuji living in it. Because I had people I was going to miss. After gaining enough power and becoming the strongest demon slayer, my relationship with my aunt and uncle became deeper on my part as I finally had the courage to do so. Not only that, I had a fiancé, and it was not just any girl but Mitsuri fucking Kenroji. Suffice it to say, I would be returning after a month or two. I took my time traveling through the thick temperate forest of Japan. I did not want to tire myself because I needed to adjust my body to a new sleeping schedule where night was day and day was night. If I tire myself too much, I'll be sleepy at night. Raven was on top of my head. She seemed to be in a good mood due to the fact that it was just the two of us again. I swear she acts more like a cat than a bird sometimes. After I was miles away from the city, a kasugai crow finally flew above me. I had a small smile on my face. I was itching to slice some demon up after the long vacation. When you describe me as a character, I hope you remember the deep passion I have for my job. A really deep passion. I read the movement of the crow's throat to understand the mission. Raven also translated it to me with Morse code, and I made sure there was no miscommunication. No individual mission. That's unfortunate, I said while processing the retail of the mission. The North that place was wet and had leeches this time around. EW. Wait, Kane is going after a lower moon? I said, trying to push down the chilling premonition that immediately invaded my mind. Nothing bad would happen. I warned her so. It seems like the Demon Slayer Corps was having a rough time with their most important pillar going on a break. So much so that they would send their healer on an investigation mission which normally takes very long. I could imagine the amount of missions piling up since I was no longer speedrunning through them. Well, it's good to disappear like this sometimes. It makes people appreciate your presence when they see the consequences of your absence. I thought to myself as I changed the direction of my travel to the far north. Am I allowed to think like that when said consequence could mean the loss of many lives? I thought while humming. How much of what I do is due to my job/duty, how much of it is a product of hate? How much of me is a genuinely good person who wants people to stop dying? I asked myself in silence. One thing about being an adolescent was that you started to ask questions with no answers in an attempt to find your identity and know yourself. Am I a good person or am I a bad person? I entertained such thoughts while traveling to the north. It has been some time since I last saw Kane. I hope she is doing okay. That woman is a ticking time bomb, but I don't want to worry too much and raise red flags. Unconsciously, I quickened my steps, breaking my perfect movement to cover the distance faster and more efficiently. After traveling for more than half a day, I finally reached the Aomori region. By that time, the sun had long since set and demons began crawling out of their hell hole. I stood atop a ridge and observed the horizon. I was not enjoying the scenery. Instead, my eyes carefully observed every little thing in the forest. My vision zoomed in and zoomed out through different areas. I could see squirrels fighting for nuts on the right side of the forest. I saw a mother bird vomiting worms and feeding her chicks in the center. I saw a snake stalking its prey on the ground. I saw leaves falling due to the wind, and I saw fishes dancing in a small pond. My eyes were many times more powerful than the eyes of hawks and eagles. Although processing all the information from such a wide range could be exhausting, I pushed myself. After 10 or so minutes standing on that ridge, I finally saw a kasugai crow in the furthest part of the horizon. The small flower decorating its head was all I needed to realize whom that crow belonged to. Kane, I said. The crow was flying around in search of assistance. It was not an emergency, but it showed that Kane needed help. How many times had it been like this? I asked myself while readying myself to take action. I had been getting Kane out of a sticky situation more times than I could count. This mainly had to do with the fact that she was supposed to die around this year. I was more focused on her, making sure she was safe. Thunder breathing, first form. I crouched down and loaded my leg like a spring. Thunderclap and flash, 20% output, 50-fold. I burst out like a terrible hurricane and used my modified first form for a total of 50 steps. My speed was not at maximum, but my muscles were less strained as a result. It was a new application of the first form I invented. I could cover up to 30 kilometers at incredible speed using this technique. I used the branches of the trees to propel myself forward, my feet never touched the ground. After talking 50 steps with thunder breathing, I found myself in a completely different area altogether. The Kasugai crow was much closer on the horizon, and with my eyes, I could finally see the situation that needed assistance. My eyes narrowed, ignoring the distance while I looked upon the scene kilometers away as if I was there myself. I sighed in relief when I saw Kene struggling to fight against a group of demons led by a lower moon. The situation was grave, but it was nothing compared to what I feared the most. Flower breathing is horrible against a group of enemies, I said while shaking my head. Although her life was not in danger, I suppose I should help her. I pulled out my sword from the sheath and grabbed at the long hilt. I brought my sword above my shoulder, which was completely different from how it was meant to be held. I was holding the odachi like a spear. Why? Because I was going to use it as such. My pupils shrank as I stopped focusing on one area. It was like a mix between unblurring the background and zooming out in a camera. Instead of zooming in on one area and seeing the details, my eyes started calculating the distance, the movement of the wind and the exact angle which I needed to hit my target. My brain processed the information and commanded my body to execute a calculated action. I did not even do this intentionally, it was all unconscious. Like how you unconsciously calculate the trajectory, speed and other factors of an object before you catch it. It was what any human could do, but I pushed the limit to a frightening degree. Esoteric art, breathing styles. Thunder wind breathing, unerring lance. The muscles in my arm exploded, producing the sound of thunder due to the sheer release of sudden force. I threw my blade like a spear. Its edge sliced through the atmosphere and traveled to the target with incredible accuracy. It took a few seconds before my sword plunged itself right between the groups of demons and Kane. They all paused for a moment to observe the strange sword that came out of nowhere. Oops. I was aiming for the boss. I guess no matter how overpowered my eyes were, it was not enough to hit a target from kilometers away with a sword thrown like a lance. But that was enough because I saw Kane's lips curve in a small smile and the demons shrunk when they took a closer look at the sword. I used thunder breathing to reach them as quickly as possible. Author, no one seemed to like the idea of Seiji using arrows, even though I thought it'd be cool ASF. But still, he will throw his sword. Join my Patreon to support the book and read ahead. Patreon, Emmanuel_Capricorn main characters aura, third POV, Kane Kocho, fuck. Such profanity rarely left the pretty lips of Kane Kocho. But if one looked at the situation she was in, they would no doubt understand her and say her curse was justified. And what exactly was the situation she found herself in? Well, she was surrounded by a few dozen or so high-level demons. That alone would give any Hashira a run for their money, but to make matters worse, there was a lower moon leading them. Fortunately for her, the lower moon was ranked 5th, which meant that the demon was one of the weakest even among the lower moon demons. She knew this from the kanji number 5, etched in his left eye. Nevertheless, it was a very problematic situation that she found herself in. You have no hope of getting out of this alive. You will die and I will feast on your corpse before I bring your head to him, the lower moon said while watching from a safe distance. The demon was a coward. And he will reward me with his blood for a job well done, the lower moon said with ecstasy. Was it normal for demons to get hard when revealing their evil plan? She thought to herself when she saw the tent in his pants. She wanted to bleach her eyes when she saw that. She moved with the grace of a dancer and the elegance of a painter while dodging the attacks coming from all the demons around her. The sound of her sword fending them off was the only thing reigning in the surroundings other than the nasty growls of the demons. She was tired. She had been investigating the demon for almost a week now, and it was filled with exhausting work because the demon was smart and deliberately destroying her mentally before ambushing her. Honestly, Kane wondered how Seiji did all those investigation missions so easily. When he was active, they never had to worry about such jobs. "Stop moving, damn it." One demon screamed and lunged at her with reckless abandon. She smiled seeing that. Finally, it was the opening she was waiting for. It was a mistake from the enemy which she planned to take full advantage of. Flower breathing, fourth form. The world turned pink and flowers started coming to life. Crimson Hanagoromo, her blade became a beautiful flower that curved and twisted in itself. The demon tried to block her slash, but it simply curved into the opening and sliced his head off. The splash of demonic blood and the trail of her blade creates the image of a blooming flower. The demons nearby paused as a sweet smell assaulted their senses. They were momentarily awed by the scene. Kane at that moment looked like an angel. She smiled. She can manage this. Flower breathing, fifth form. Her arm became loose, dangling like a new plant, a young flower. That was until it burst into action and painted beautiful curves of 9 slashes. Flowers bloomed, and her movement was poetry in motion, the best of grace. In one single instance, when demons drew breath, 9 heads fell. Blood splattered violently, but strangely enough, not a drop touched her, as if the world was careful to not stain her beauty. It was violence at its most beautiful. Beauty at its most cruel. "Peonies of futility," she whispered before the demons dissipated. "What the hell are you guys doing? Go! Attack her before she kills anyone else." The lower moon was the first to escape from the trance. Kane exhaled sharply, blowing her bangs up before she engaged against the demons once more. After that, there was no more opening she could take advantage of. Flower breathing relied a lot on the eyes of the user. In a sense, it was basically Seiji's normal fighting style but watered down. The user fought best when they could focus on one enemy instead of multiple, since they didn't have special eyes like Seiji who could process and focus on multiple opponents at once. A pair of eyes could only focus on one enemy at a time. So with no more openings, Kane was slowly pushed back. The lower moon also joined the fight a few times, which made her defeat even quicker. But the lower moon never engaged in a long fight, fearing that she might have a trump card. Which she did. "Do I really need to use that?" she thought to herself. She was referring to the final form of flower breathing that could enhance the user's eyes so that they could see in slow motion. However, the technique could cause the rupture of blood vessels in the eyes and cause partial blindness, so it was a risky technique that she preferred not to use. If she used it, she would no doubt win this confrontation or at least assure her survival. But she was still hesitant to do so, hoping she would find a better way out of this. Seiji. The image of a purple boy appeared in her mind and she immediately became flustered and embarrassed. She almost lost focus and allowed a demon to slash at her. It was understandable, after all, it was shameful that she was hoping for help from him even though she was supposed to be his senior. She couldn't help it. If someone was always there to have your back for so many times, you would naturally start relying on it. And Seiji had always been there for her. Every single time some trouble emerged in her life, he was there to save her. This was because Seiji, knowing that Kane would be in danger soon according to canon, was fully focused on her. Whenever she was on a mission, he would also remain close to her and immediately rush to her when she was in need, fearing that it would be her end. He did this to other Hashiras too, but he gave his everything when it came to her. This had been happening for almost a year now, ever since she turned 17. Which was the year when she would encounter Doma and die according to the canon timeline. It was this exact care that Seiji showed which made her eventually fall for him. Which, by the way, she still hadn't accepted yet. It was impossible for a virgin girl to not fall in love when a man showed her such care and attention. For no particular reason as well from Kane's perspective. She was fine till the 4th time he helped her, but from then on, he slowly grew in her heart. Such protectiveness really tickled her femininity. There was no way else to put it. She shook her head, dispersing all thoughts because the claws of one demon came too close to her liking. It was lucky that they didn't have tricky blood demon art. She took a sharp breath and leapt back to create distance. She brought her sword close to her chest and her posture changed. A sudden stillness fell in the air and even the demons stopped. Every instinct collectively screamed out, "Danger!" Kane blinked. She was just about to use the final form of flower breathing but was left confused. The breathing technique never had such weight before. Was it really her? No. It couldn't be her because she felt the danger too, like something stronger than all of them combined was watching them. It was then that they heard a sharp whistle. It was the sound of a blade cutting through the atmosphere like butter. Unbothered by the laws of physics, it flew straight at them. Thunder followed. Asterisk boom. Asterisk then a long sword, the color of purple, planted itself on the ground, separating Kane from the groups of demons. The ground shook and the force stirred up a cloud of smoke. But even when the dust settled, no one moved an inch. Even the demons stopped. It was as if the blade had created an invisible line separating Kane from the demon. The two groups were in different dimensions entirely. The demons were evil and violent, yet even they didn't dare cross the invisible line. They stared at the sword which was planted on the ground. Evil demon, the demons read the kanji on the sword. The letters seemed to call out to them. Destroyer. That's another Hashira. The lower moon gasped and looked in every direction rapidly, afraid that someone would ambush him too. It's a long sword. It's purple, one of the demons said and shrunk back in fear. Demons were as smart as any human. The only difference was that they were more aggressive and they had supernatural powers. So like any human society, rumors also spread amongst the demons. Everyone knew whose blade that was. The long katana and the purple color made it unique from every other sword. Seiji Shirgan. He was the most dangerous Hashira because he had no weakness, unlike the others. He also had the ability to pinpoint any ticks used by demons. Terrorizing a village used to be the most efficient way to live for a demon, and only the very top demons were able to enjoy this privilege. But now, no one ever wanted to do it. No one wanted to control or terrorize a village. Because if you did, the purple Hashira would come to your village, find out instantly any tricks or manipulation you used, and he would hunt you in the daylight. You cannot hide. Hiding was not the best way to survive anymore, running was. Your best survival was trying to run from the now fastest Hashira. Because you couldn't hide from the purple Hashira. And it was said that the Hashira was the most brutal demon slayer of all. They said it was because he was deaf and he couldn't hear you begging, screaming, or crying. He was absolutely ruthless. The cruelest one is the deaf Hashira. Beware of the deaf Hashira. Run from the purple. The sun is kinder than the long sword. At least, that's how the rumors went. So they knew him, they knew Seiji Shirgan. Of course, they would know him, after all, he had completed more missions than most of the Hashiras that ever existed in just 2 years. Such a massacre would not go unnoticed by the demons. He is still far away. He is kilometers away, the lower moon suddenly exclaimed after checking the scent in the air. Kill that titch quickly, the lower moon commanded. After hesitating once more, the demons attacked Kane again, but this time, they were not able to push her back anymore. Their spirit was already beaten and they fought with eyes on their back, fearing that the purple one would reach them by now. Their main concern was on escape routes instead of the Kane. On the other hand, Kane fought with everything she could, without conserving energy to prolong the fight because she knew Seiji would reach her soon. Half a minute passed. Wait. How is he already this close? The lower moon suddenly said after catching a scent in the air again. Seiji used thunder breathing so he easily covered the distance. Now the lower moon was panicked. Run. They turned around and were about to run and escape from different directions, but it was all too late. Because by the time they decided to run, the hilt of the long sword already found a hand. Esoteric art, breathing styles, a cold whisper. The only sound. Storm breathing, water plus wind plus thunder, first form. Tempest fury. Maybe it would have been better to die by the beautiful flower breathing, because what came next was the most violent way a demon could die. Their bodies splattered throughout the forest, torn apart, blown apart before everything else was ripped and minced. Master of breathing styles, Seiji's POV, my arm stung after throwing my sword. You could imagine how taxing it would be, to use thunder breathing and wind breathing simultaneously when thunder breathing alone strained the body. If I were not such a bullshit character, then it would have been impossible for anyone. You have to remember that no one could learn sun breathing because it was really stressful for the body, so Yorichi had to teach the early Hashiras a watered-down version of sun breathing and help them shape their style. In a way, one breathing style was all the human body should be able to take. But I was an anomaly due to my body, which was trained perfectly since I was young, and because of my impeccable mastery over breathing styles. Mixing breathing styles was like using two languages in one sentence. Still, even I had limits. My current limit was using two breathing styles at once. Of course, this was still more taxing to the body than normal breathing, so I mostly used it to finish my opponents instantly. Fortunately, I was constantly improving my technique and my body was also growing stronger, so I pushed this limit day by day. Eventually, I hope to be able to use all breathing styles at once. Still won't stop after being warned, huh? I said with mirthless chuckles while looking at the scene kilometers away. I inhaled sharply. Raven flew off my head and I lowered my body, locking my joints like a spring. Purple lighting crackled around my body, and the ground caved in due to the weight of my raw strength. Then I exploded out with the speed of lighting and the intensity of thunder. Thunder clap and flash, tenfold. Although I just spammed the technique before, I forced my body to do it once more. I would count this as my monthly leg day. In just half a minute, I reached the place where the fighting took place. The demons immediately turned around to flee, but it was all too late. Should have taken the warning when they had the chance. The world was in slow motion from my perspective as I carefully inspected the situation. The lower moon was ranked 5, and with a glance, I could tell that he was weak, much weaker than the one I slayed before I became Hashira. The rest of the demons were also nothing in my eyes. They could be a threat to middle to lower-ranked demon slayers, but in front of a Hashira, they were cannon fodders. They were ants. Seeing that, I deemed it to be safe enough to train myself. If they posed a real threat, I would have been more cautious, but they did not. So let's do this, let's use 3 breathing styles all at once. An important lesson I learned about mixed breathing was that there were some breathing styles that were impossible to mix. This was because of their opposite nature. For example, if you tried to use 2 breathing styles at once, you could use thunder breathing and wind breathing, thunder breathing and flame breathing, wind breathing and flame breathing. But you could not use flame breathing and water breathing or water breathing and wind breathing. They just had completely different concepts behind them. So you could say there were some breathing styles you could use together and some others that you could not, no matter how skilled you were. But, this changed when you used 3 breathing styles at once. At this point, you could use any breathing styles you want and mix them together. So it was possible to use water breathing, wind breathing and thunder breathing together even though wind breathing and water breathing opposed each other. This was because thunder breathing acted as a bridge that connected them. Wind breathing was explosive, violent and chaotic. Water breathing was about precision, adaptability, and accuracy. Then there was thunder breathing, which was a mix between both. It was an explosion but also controlled and precise. If you remember, what made thunder breathing so fast was that you explode out but concentrating on a single point and linear path. Therefore it acted as a bridge between the 2 completely opposite breathing styles. Esoteric art, breathing styles. I whispered while the demons fled. I actually had a name for this. Water breathing, wind breathing and thunder breathing all together. Storm breathing, first form. Tempest Fury. My arm exploded to action as every fiber of the muscles in my arm worked together to produce raw strength in a single instant's thunder breathing. A shockwave erupted and a small hurricane formed from my swing. Wind blades came to life and ripped apart flesh and bones wind breathing. My arm did not lose accuracy even when it moved with such force. The kinetic energy of my swing was controlled and I hit only what I wanted, the demons. Even the wind blades only hit the demons, nothing else, not even a mosquito was not harmed in my attack water breathing. Boom. A violent gust of wind turned the demons into mashed flesh and they splattered around the forest. But none of the mess came to my direction. I remained silent and stood in my place. Not because I was trying to act cool, but because my body was genuinely stuck. I kid you not, using 3 breathing at once was not kind to the body. I only used 1 attack and I felt like I just worked out the entire day. This was why I would never use it against a serious opponent yet, it was too ineffective and crippled my body. The human body has limits. I exhaled all of the air in my lungs and finally, I could feel my body again. Although fatigued, I could move. I turned around to lock eyes with Kane who had awe and wonder in her eyes. My male ego was pleased to impress a pretty girl like her, which by the way was one of the reasons why I did what I did. Training myself was the main reason though. Long time no see, I said. But she did not respond and shifted her eyes to somewhere else. Rude. Behind you, she said. I read the movement of her larynx so I moved before her words fully left her mouth. I drew my blade, sharp and in perfect condition, and sliced behind me. I could see behind me from the reflection of my blade so my blade easily found the neck of the lower moon. The sharp edge of my sword bit into his flesh. I did not even put much force as his own momentum pushed against the blade and sliced off his head. His body crashed on my back, blood stained my clothes before he fell. But his decapitated head fell in front of me and landed near my foot. It gave me the chance to stare down at his pathetic state before he disappeared. Luckily, his blood stain also turned into dust. Ha! If Jill could one-shot Lower Moon 5, so can I. How did you do that? Do you have eyes behind your back? Kane asked me. She just saw me use 3 breathing styles all at once and wanted to know how I was aware of what was happening behind me. She has priorities all right. Like some of you, complaining about the logic behind my deafness when literally there are much stranger things that define logic here. There is a reason why I always kept my blade in pristine condition. I said, I could see him from the reflection when I drew my blade. Oh, she nodded with a realization. Then she fully stood up and gave me a beautiful smile that was just enough. Welcome back, Seiji. Please don't leave us for so long again, things were difficult without you, she said. Next time I go on a vacation, I'll have already killed the Demon King. I said, causing her to laugh, not knowing that I was dead serious. You saved me again, huh? How many times did that make? I shrugged, I'm not counting but a few times. I can't thank you enough. I'm not sure if there even is anything I can do to repay you, she said while tilting her head. You don't need to repay me anything, you give me free healthcare. That is more than enough. I said. If only she knew how much that meant to me. But. I said and crossed my arms and said sternly like a father scolding his daughter. You took an investigation mission by yourself, huh? I thought I told you not to do that. She was lost for words, sorry. How do I explain to someone that they will die soon so they need to be careful and take my words seriously? Wait, can you even do that? Why should I follow your words like a little girl? What are you, my husband? She asked me in return but soon lost her heat under my narrowed eyes. Is that what it would take to make her listen to me? In my defense, the Demon Slayer Corps was short on manpower. Although I'm ashamed we found out this way, you were doing 3 Hashiras worth of missions so your absence meant the same as the absence of 3 Hashiras suddenly. I needed to step up or people would continue dying, she said. That was reasonable. If not for the fact that she would die, and last time I checked, the dead helps no one. Well, now that I was back, hopefully, nothing bad would happen. I have done so much that the butterfly effect would probably change the future of Kane by now. It's just that I wanted to make sure, at least until she turned 18. Maybe then I would relax a bit. I sighed. That's fine, now that I'm back please avoid dangerous missions, okay? I said. Investigation missions were dangerous specifically because you had no information beforehand. You could be tracking a random demon or the Demon King himself without even knowing. A normal slaying mission where the demon was already identified was much safer compared to it. A short silence followed. Actually it is always silent for me, but Iquim, before I broke the silence by asking. Wanna catch a bite? It's literally midnight. What a dumbass question. Sure, she said and flashed a smile. Okay, maybe it was not a dumbass question. She seemed happy with the idea, enthusiastic even. Let's go. And so we did. Soon after, the fact that there would be no restaurant open during the night hit me, so we literally had to catch a bite. At first, I hunted and tried to kill a rabbit for food, but Kane stopped me, saying that it was too cute to eat. Then I went after a wild pig, but she said it was too dirty and ugly to be eaten. Talk about being spoiled. Finally, we found a deer and it was acceptable to the flower Hashira. The love Hashira, third POV, Mitsuri Kenroji, a day without him felt wrong, like a meal without salt if she had to describe the feeling. It was truly odd she felt that way when she had been living 16 years without him. It was only a month ago when they met, but she felt like she'd known him her whole life. And she missed him, as if she had known him her whole life. It's been years. She whispered while gazing up at the blue sky, like she saw him do often. She imagined that anywhere he was, he would look up at the sky too, and at this moment, they would be seeing the same scene. There you go again, lost in thought. It's only been a week. Her mother said while stitching patterns on a blanket. A week, that feels like years, she thought in her mind. He said he would return after a month, did he not? Stop thinking about him and he will be back in no time, her mother said. How the heck was she supposed to not think about him? Trying not to think about him in itself was thinking about him. Come, help me with this, her mother finally said, and Mitsuri dragged herself up from the veranda and sat down beside her mother. Hold this for me, and cut the threads. Her mother said, and Mitsuri moved absent-mindedly. Her body was doing the task, but her mind was not on the same task. She couldn't help but worry. Demons. Those nasty beings that feed on humans and lurk in the night. Seiji told her that they were stronger than humans, and the Demon Slayer Corp was the only shield protecting innocent lives from the demons. Seiji himself was in the Demon Slayer Corps. No one knew, but he was fighting battles to protect everyone. He was not like those soldiers who killed other humans in wars, he was genuinely protecting humanity. Even though he was not rewarded with medals or fame, he did it for his family who were killed by demons. He fought to make sure no one would face the same tragedy that he did. Mitsuri really admired him. But she couldn't help but worry at the same time. What if he got hurt while fighting against those demons? What if she didn't even want to finish that line of thought. I should be with him, the thought suddenly invaded her mind and wouldn't leave. She was supposed to be his wife, was she not? And the duty of a wife was to always support their husband. Should she really be staying still like this? You are gifted, Mitsuri, you are incredible. Seiji once told her while he was teaching her some fighting moves so that she could protect herself. He said that all her life, she was forced to hide her strength, so he wanted her to release all those shackles and freely use them. He said she should know the limits of her body. He said it was a crime for her to not know what her body was capable of. You always say that, do you really think so? She said while looking at herself. Seiji was strong, many times stronger than herself, especially when he used his strange breathing, so she did not have to hold back when she was with him. That also made her feel that she might not be that special. Absolutely. I am certain that you can become stronger than most people with a little bit of training, he said with a smile. She remembers this interaction. Does that not mean that she could become a demon slayer and fight alongside him if she trained? Maybe then she would be more helpful than just staying here. But he told me to wait for Hai, she thought in her mind. Her mind was telling her that Seiji did not want her to do it. Maybe because he was so protective of her and did not want her to ever be in danger. Yet her heart was telling her to do it. There was a strange calling to the idea of being a demon slayer as if she was born for it. In the end, Mitsuri was one to follow her heart instead of her mind. She suddenly stood up, spooking her mother, and she yelled out. I have decided, she said with sparkling eyes. What is it, Mitsuri? I have decided to go to him and always stay by his side. What? You don't mean, her mother asked, but Mitsuri was already gone. She ran around the house and into her room. She quickly packed everything she would need. Her mother could only watch in confusion before her father joined. What's going on, dear? I'm not sure myself. I'm still figuring it out, the mother replied. The old couple stood still and watched as their daughter ran around the house, collecting odd things and packing a bag. A few minutes later, she stopped in front of them. Mother. Father. I have decided to go to Seiji. Mitsuri said with determination. Calm down, dear, are you sure this is a good idea? Do you even know where he is? Her father asked. All they knew was that Seiji would travel around Japan due to things related to his job. Yes. She lied. But she could figure that out later. That still doesn't mean that you should just leave so suddenly. Her mother said sternly. I'm sorry, mother and father, but I need to do this. My heart is telling me so, she said and quickly fastened her bag behind her. Goodbye. Love you. She said and ran out of the house. She was too fast for her parents to say anything. That girl, honestly, her mother said with a helpless shake of her head. Ha ha ha, this reminds me of when she was young, her father laughed. It was not the first time Mitsuri tried to run away from home. But that was only when she was a child and during her early teens when she was getting rejected. Aren't you going to run after her? Her mother asked, to which they both looked down at his belly. He had been putting weights in his older years, he was not as fast as he used to be, so there was no way he would catch up to her. Don't worry, what's the worst that could happen? The father asked. Are you insane? What if she encountered bad men? Her mother said, leaving the father confused. I don't want us to pay for others' medical bills again. She clarified, and the father nodded. Last time Mitsuri was bullied for her hair and catcalled, a single swing sent a man flying and he broke many bones. I'll send a servant to follow her. The father said and immediately left for the courtyard. Mitsuri stood on the outskirts of the city. She looked at all of the different roads leading to different places and she did not know which one to choose. Maybe she should have planned better before she ran off. Now she did not know what to do. Should I just return? Maybe I should ask Seiji's parents and try again tomorrow, she said with a sigh. A blush appeared on her cheeks due to embarrassment as well. She was not really the type to think things through. She was a bit of a musclehead. She was about to return when a crow suddenly landed on the branch of a tree nearby. And much to her shock, the crow started speaking in a very deep and commanding voice. Miss Kenroji. I was going to respect Seiji's wishes and not intrude in your life, but I see that you have come to a decision, the crow said while staring straight into her soul. Honestly, Miss Yuri wanted to scream. But a part of her was fascinated. How do you know me? She asked. We know a lot of people, Miss Kenroji. My master is constantly in search of new talents, there was no way we would have missed someone as special as you, the crow said. Let me ask you one thing, Miss Kenroji. Do you want to be a demon slayer and fight beside your fiancé Seiji Shirgan? Mitsuri blinked, equally creeped out and impressed that the crow knew so much. But the answer was obvious, it came from the heart. Yes. She felt like the crow smiled at her answer. Then follow me, saying so, the crow took to the sky and Mitsuri followed after him, and so, Mitsuri set off to chase after her love. Fighting the Kocho sisters, Seiji's POV, this is ridiculous. Thud, my back hit the ground in a thud of humiliation and defeat. I looked up and saw Kane looking down on me with sweat falling down her fair face, which was glowing pink due to her body temperature. I thought I would be able to win against her since I now had a fiancé and someone I like. With the new commitment, I thought I would fare better and seeing her bare body would no longer throw me off. But no, a horny man was still a horny man, no matter if he was engaged or had a wife. It's just how we were created, how we evolved. At the age of 16, I discovered that I might be a scumbag. Are you okay? She asked, concern on her face. The strongest Hashira, losing due to the allure of a woman. Just great. I thought and pushed myself off the ground. Similar to me, Kane was stronger when fighting against humans and in one-on-one. Even if she was weaker than other Hashiras, in a duel she was just as strong, so I could not quite beat her without using my eyes. Well, I could, but without my eyes, my attacks would lose their accuracy and I could harm her. Imagine I use mixed breathing without my eyes, I would obliterate her without even intending to do so. And God forbid I won't harm a single strand of her hair. Thank you for the spar, I think I'm fine now, I said. I challenged her to a spar, saying that I needed to wash off the sluggish stain on my skills due to the long vacation. It's the least I can do, Kane replied with a small smile. You know, you are losing a ton of aura whenever you lose to her, a voice suddenly came from the veranda of the flower mansion. I turned my head and saw Shinobu sitting there. My eyes did not immediately go to her face though, they first landed on her chest as I thought about how much things could change in just a few months. The last time I saw them, they were humble B-cup. But now they were proud and confident D-cup. They were not as big as Kane's, but her small stature made them more pronounced. Still, both of them lose to Mitsuri in this aspect. My future wife was the final boss of tits. Not Sigma at all, Shinobu said while shaking her head as I contemplated if it really was a good idea to teach her about brain rot words. Don't say it like that, Shinobu, he is clearly holding back against me. If he really wanted to, he can defeat me anytime. Kane replied in my stead. That's what I'm saying, it's a simp activity. Shibi, are you still mad that I didn't get you anything from Tokyo? I asked and she turned her head with a pout. Not really, she was definitely still upset about that. I mean, I totally forgot that she asked for something when I left. It was my bad. Just then, Kaneo ran up to me with water in her hand. Her face was still stoic and she remained silent, but I could read the emotions on her face now because she had them. Thank you, Kaneo, I said with a smile and took the water from her before taking huge gulps. After I was done, I wiped my lips and said, now that that is done, how about you show me your new insect breathing style, Shibi? I heard that you are quickly climbing up the ranks with it. Only if you let me coat the tip of my sword with a paralysis poison, she said with a closed-eyed smile that looked extremely gentle. I was going to ask why, but I was confident that she wouldn't be able to even land a single scratch on me, so I said. Sure, she beamed a harmless smile before coming up to me on the open ground. Meanwhile, Kane picked up the silent Kaneo like a teddy bear and went to the veranda. She plopped Kaneo on her lap and they both watched us from a safe distance. Ready? I asked with a smile. My eyes glowed purple as I took a quick glance at every single inch of her being. All truths were revealed. The information I got from a glance was akin to someone who spent weeks studying her. The change in her fighting and breathing style resulted in a change in her body. Her new techniques were imprinted on her. Her frontal delts, shoulders, were incredibly developed, and so was her triceps. They were denser and many times more powerful than 2 years ago, which hints at her fighting style heavily relying on stabbing. Her hamstrings and the tendons in her legs were strong as well, telling me that she could lunge at me with incredible speed or she could jump extremely high. Her forearms were a little different from other swordsmen. They were more attuned to gripping a sword than being dexterous in handling a sword. All these unique features of her body told me how she was different from the average swordsman. They also told me her full capacity, how strong she could stab, how much force she could produce and how long she should be able to last in an all-out battle. I still did not know how she was going to put together these stats, but I was now aware of the overall capability of her body. I could also see how she trained, and the history of her physique. My mind was already predicting how she would move and fight. My ears turned red and I blushed due to other things I had seen. Ahem, but it was not time to delve into that. Another thing that caught my attention was her sword, which was the exact replica of her canon counterpart. Even with my influence, it seemed that remained the same. I could see that her sword was crafted by a master and had a unique design. There was a small tube inside her sword that could inject poison into the enemy. So she was not just coating the tip of her sword with poison. Even though I saw it, I was not fully aware of how that worked. "Here I come," Shinobu said before she disappeared. She was actually faster than I expected. I realized that I had not taken into account how truly small and light she was. But such speed was not enough to even quicken my heartbeat. She lunged at me while stabbing her sword. I mirrored her movement and stabbed my odachi forward, and in a split second, the tip of my sword connected with the tip of her sword. A shockwave exploded and her movement paused in an instant. Boom. It was the same block I used against Jewel, but unlike him, Shinobu did not seem shocked. She expected such incredible feats from me, so she was not surprised. She quickly pulled back her sword and then her arm blurred. Multiple stabs came at me, aiming at different vital points in my body. The sheer speed made the air sing a chilling tune. Impressive. Water breathing, 7th form, I said, and my body moved with grace and ease. My mastery over water breathing was such that movement flowed through my body without even much intention. Almost like pressing a button and my body automatically moving on its own. Piercing raindrop, I matched every stab that came my way. Water not only adapts but it often mirrors. It had the capacity to become anything. As the saying goes, if you put water into a cup it becomes the cup. Sparks flew as the tiniest tips of our blade connected multiple times in a show of superhuman precision. We were more precise and accurate than even any machine invented. Insect breathing, 1st form, she whispered, and the exchange stopped. Butterfly dance. I saw butterflies emerge from her long haori. She pushed herself off the ground and leapt above me. She looked like a fairy with the butterflies around her. I followed her until the sun blinded me. When she saw that I was blinded and her position was in line with the sun, she delivered a stab, but this time, she twisted her blade. I tried to block her with the flat side of my sword, but the tip of her blade twisted and changed trajectory. Without much effort, I tilted my head and the sword flushed past my ear. It was close enough to even cut parts of my purple hair. She landed behind me and pulled back her sword with extreme force. I was confused at first until the tip of her blade, which was like a hook due to the thinner body, hooked against my blade and she pulled my sword down. She created an opening. I didn't use my eyes, so I was pleasantly surprised. Then her sword came at me, faster than ever before. It aimed straight at my chest for a larger target. She didn't need to leave a fatal wound. A scratch was all she needed due to her poison. My eyes allowed me to naturally perceive the action in slow motion, but with my sword being pulled down, I could not block. I had no time to dodge either due to the speed of her stab. Was I going to lose? Absolutely not. I was not like those MCs in anime who got beaten by waifus no matter how strong they were. Being reincarnated and living the fanfiction life was all about destroying the tradition. I already lost to Kane, so ain't no way I was going to lose against Shinobu too. My hand moved at the speed of sound like a whip and I caught her blade. The body of her sword was thin and had no sharp edges, so I could grab it with no problem. I'm glad to see that you finally found your own path, I said with a genuine smile. She pushed and pulled at her sword to get it out of my iron grip, but she failed. So she returned my smile with a harmless one. It was only possible due to your help, she said before tapping her foot on the ground. A sharp blade emerged from the top of her sandals and she kicked at me. But I easily stopped it with my foot. I already saw all her hidden weapons when I took a glance at her before the fight. That's dangerous, and adorable at the same time, I said, and I could see veins popping on her forehead. She didn't like it when I treated her like a little girl. She was a very small girl, so naturally, she hated being treated like so. In the end, she sighed and admitted defeat. I heard Kaneo clapping for me and I looked at her with a fond smile. Her face was void of expression, but I saw her eyes shining. You did well, Shinobu. You have improved a lot. Kane said, to which Shinobu nodded, proud of herself. Just then, a kasugai crow flew above us and landed on the roof of the house. Kane Kocho, Seiji Shirgan. Master Ubuyashiki summons you for a Hashira meeting. Hashira meeting rhymes with drama, Seiji's POV. I am happy to see you all safe and healthy today. Kagaya Ubuyashiki said while all of us knelt down in front of his veranda. He was barely sitting up on his futon, clearly the disease was getting worse. We are glad to see you healthy as well. All of them said in unison except me, of course, because I was the main edgy character who bowed down to no one. Kidding. It's just because of my years and I still had trouble matching the intensity of these samurai traditions. Not to mention Ubayashi was not actually healthy, I know with my eyes. Rise up, my children, it is unsightly to see the pillars kneel to a sick man like me. I told you, you don't need to do so. Ubuyashiki said softly. That just made us want to do it even more though. The man really deserves some respect, especially after giving me that long vacation. Yeah, I'm that easy to bribe. We all rose and stood in front of him. He looked at all of us with a fond smile, like a father gazing proudly at his children. All of the Hashiras were here except for the fire Hashira, Shinjiro Kyojiro. But it was not a surprise since he had been missing the Hashira meetings frequently. Seiji, he called me and I responded. It's good to have you back, my boy, he said with a smile. I knew how hard it was for him to talk, so I was happy that he spared me a few words personally. Thank you, I'm happy to be back as well. I said. I was glad to hear that you were able to settle your inheritance and spend time with your family, he said. He knew all these things because I would send him letters monthly while I was away, asking how the Demon Slayer Corp was doing and reporting on what I encountered or what I'd accomplished. Like that demon I slayed in Tokyo, for example. And congratulations on your engagement. Thank you. That got a few raised eyebrows from my fellow Hashiras, but most of them just shrugged it off. After all, it was not rare for a boy my age, with parents, to be engaged to a girl. It was one of the privileges of having a good family and not being an orphan. Well, most of them at least, because one person absolutely exploded in shock. What? It was Kane. I was deaf, but I could hear the surprise in her voice. I turned to look at her and saw the absolute shock and horror on her face. What do you mean engagement? Ah, Seiji's parents arranged an engagement for him while he stayed with them. Ubuyashiki explained. You mean like, with a girl? She asked. Now what the fuck does that mean? Do I not look straight? Why would I be engaged with a man? I suppose. Ubuyashiki chuckled. Then her head snapped towards me. I was caught off guard by the intensity of her eyes. And you accepted? Why did I feel like I committed a crime? Yes. So, you are going to get married with this girl? Hopefully. If I live long enough for that. I had absolutely no clue why, but a hurt look painted her pretty face. It was not like when she got hit during training or by a demon. It was like someone stabbed her in the chest. Why, she said, I could hear her voice quiver almost, why didn't you tell me? Okay, hold the fuck on. I need to do a very deep analysis of my life to understand the context of this situation. Because the way she was reacting almost made it seem like she was in love with me. There was no other way to explain such a reaction. But that was completely insane. Was she in love with me? It was impossible to tell because of her teasing nature. It was hard to tell when she was flirting or when she was teasing me. Because of this, even if she actually had feelings for me, I would have chalked it up to her messing with me. Or, was she not teasing me all this time? Was I being like those dense main characters even though I despised them? I thought I was different, especially with my eyes. I knew Mitsuri loved me, I knew Shinobu had a small crush on me. I was aware of these things because I could see deeper with my eyes. But what about Kane? Did I also notice her feelings but I just ignored them thinking she was just teasing me? Now I was completely confused. My mind went into a loop as thoughts buzzed in my head like bees. I'm sorry, I was not sure what I was apologizing for. But the look in her eyes made my heart feel like it should apologize. After my words fell, I finally noticed that all eyes were on us too. Every Hashira present was silent as they observed the small drama with rapt attention. Kane too quickly took notice of this and she quickly hid her feelings, shelving them away behind her closed-eyed smile that looked playful. Era, what are you apologizing for? I was just surprised, that's all, she said and covered her mouth with her haori while she giggled. I always thought of you as my little brother. It felt like yesterday when you became a Hashira as a child. It completely caught me off guard to hear you take such a drastic step in life, she said. I guess you are all grown now. Okay, now I feel dumb. But my eyes saw it so clearly. Was this just an act? Did I misunderstand it? Or was my misunderstanding a misunderstanding? Come on, I was an absolute amateur in love. I did not have experience in both lives. It was unfair to give me such a complicated situation. After she said that, the others nodded their head, finding it reasonable why she was so surprised. But strangely enough, tears started falling from Jyomiai and he sobbed silently. Why are you suddenly crying again? Sanemi asked. Nothing. Jyomi answered and looked up to the sky, nothing at all. But he just cried harder. He definitely knew something we didn't. Okay everyone, let us begin today's Hashira meeting, Ubuyashiki said and the meeting started. The Hashira meeting proceeded like usual. There were no strange things happening, even Kane acted completely normal. The only difference was that the statistics this time were horrible compared to other times. It was a direct consequence of my absence. It couldn't be stressed enough how valuable I was in completing missions. With my eyes, I could do an investigation mission that would take other Hashiras weeks, in less than a day. That meant that no other Hashiras had to do an investigation mission and waste their time. They could focus their efforts on other things. It could be seen that I really lived up to my title of the Pillar of Pillars. The meeting took less time than usual as we were able to complete it at noon. One of the main reasons was that Ubuyashiki was sick and could not talk for too long. In the end, he had to end the meeting to take his medicine and rest up. He told us to spend the remaining time with each other as it was not often that we would gather in one place. And all of us were happy to be given the time as well. Ju immediately came up to me after the meeting, asking me about how my vacation was and about my engagement. Tengen soon joined in, calling himself the master in the way of being a good husband. He presented the fact that he could keep 3 wives happy as proof of his qualifications. He offered to teach me some tricks and advice which I seriously considered. I was not sure but I think Jyomiai was listening to our conversation from far away. He had crazy good hearing so he need not come close to hear us. But all that came to an end when Sanemi walked up to me and yelled. Seiji! I challenge you to a duel. There he goes. Let's fight. He always challenged me to duels and he lost worse with each time. I sighed, a little tired of constantly beating him up at this point. I tried to discourage him by beating him really badly once. I only used wind breathing, but Sanemi was anything but a quitter. He was like David Goggins if he had anger issues and Asian. But seeing him walk up to me, I suddenly had an idea. I did not want to fight him, but there was someone I wanted to fight. All this time, I had called myself the strongest Hashira, but it was not official yet. So let's make that official. I will deal with you later, I said, Hashirama style, before turning towards Gyomii. Big brother Gyomii, I challenge you to a duel. Hey, asshole. I challenged you first. Sanemi raged behind me. Gyomii turned his body to face me. His crying face had now grown firm like a stone and he said, we shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves. One of us could get hurt. He joined his hands in prayer. By one of us could get hurt, he meant I could get hurt. He was aware of how strong he was, and for the longest part of his life, he had lived in fear of his own strength. I would never get him to accept officially. So I pulled out my sword and held it in a way that the blunt side was facing forward. Then in a gust of wind, I disappeared from my place, which was in the middle of Tengen and Zhu. Their eyes widened in surprise, but I am committed to my decision. In the blink of an eye, I was in front of Gyomii. Not only that, my feet were above the ground and I swung the blunt side of my blade down at him in a perfect arc. His hand moved in a blur and he stopped my blade with his plan. Veins popped out in his hand as the weight of my attack pushed down on him. The ground he stood on caved in. A cobweb of cracks formed around his feet and a violent shockwave followed. Please accept my request. I insist, I said with a grin, eyes glowing purple. If you say so. Raw strength explode.